I'm Suruthi.
And I am Hannah.
And welcome to RedHanded, where I have quite a lot of some sort of fruit roll-up situation stuck in my teeth.
There is literally no time where it is appropriate to tell people what's inside your mouth, unless it's the dentist.
I'm going to. I'm very hungry, and I thought, what I'll do, quick energy, I'll stuff this fruit wind-up or whatever it is in my mouth. Now there's quite a lot of gummy fruit just jamming up my teeth.
For an audio piece
podcast
of content is exactly what you want.
Especially with a plosive mouth. It's a good thing I've got this pop filter. Yeah. So anyway, hello everyone, welcome. It's the penultimate episode of 2021.
Oh my God.
Over here at RedHanded. Oh my God, indeed. And it's a two-parter, so it's basically the last episode. Kind of.
Yeah.
Mega last episode. Because it's a two-parter.
It is a two-parter. What a year. What a year we have had. Ups, downs, billboards, bestsellers, shows, sold-out tours.
All thanks to you guys.
All thanks to you guys.
Fucking hell, guys. Like, I don't know. I still have to pinch myself that we are where we are. I talk to my friends or go on these fucking terrible dates. And they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, you literally won't believe me.
No, exactly.
I get to have the best job ever.
Yes, and we're so incredibly lucky and thankful to be where we are. And it is, 100% down to you. So as a reward, what we generally do at Christmas as a present, apart from our Patreon Christmas party, which we're having this year, which if you're not a patron, you're not invited. What we do at Christmas is we give you a case that you ask for all the time, but on our regular programming, we have just been like, no, it's been done so many times, what can we possibly bring to it? Well, my friends, last year we did John Benet Ramsey, and this year it's Casey Anthony.
Yeah, we thought it would be really fun to wrap up 2021 with a mind-meltingly infuriating case. That's how I would describe this
I think
case.
That's a fair assessment. No one tells a word of the truth. So you just have to, make up your own minds as usual. As you know, we are not here to tell you what to think. But you'll be thinking a lot of things, you'll be forming a lot of thoughts, and then all of those thoughts will be blown to smithereens by the next bit of the episode, because none of it makes sense.
No, it doesn't. So, everyone paying attention? Good. Let's get started.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. And a Happy New Year. We often talk about the idea that people don't always react in the quote-unquote right way when it comes to grief, and how it can be deeply unfair to judge them on this, especially when they're in a high-stress situation. But, in my opinion, this isn't one of those cases. Today, as we've already said, we're talking about one of the most well-known true crime stories out there. It's also one of the weirdest, filled with bizarre lies, things that make absolutely no sense whatsoever, and a cast of characters so odd that if you can get through the next two episodes without screaming, well done.
I won't.
I did not during the research. Hannah had to sit next to me, and I'm sure she saw a lot of head shaking and muttering.
A lot of sighing. And so we're sitting in a glass box all day, every day together now, which honestly, I couldn't be more grateful. It's so nice to not be on my own. But the past 2 weeks have just been silence. Just furious typing and silence.
Yeah, with the occasional exasperated head shake from me. So, this is when it begins. On the 15th of July, 2008, at 8:09 p.m., the Orlando Sheriff's Department received the following call.
Hello. Hi, I drove to the police department here on Pershing, but you guys are closed. I need to bring someone into the police department. Can you tell me where the closest one I can come into?
What are you trying to accomplish by bringing them to the station?
I have a 22-year-old person that has grand theft sitting in my auto with me.
So the 22-year-old person stole something?
Yes.
Is this a relative?
Yes.
Where did they steal it from?
My car and also money.
Okay, is this your son?
Daughter.
Okay, so your daughter stole money from your car?
No, my car was stolen. We retrieved it today. We found out where it was at. Retrieved it. I've got that, and I've got affidavit for my banking account. I want to bring her in. I want to press charges.
Where did all of this happen?
So, the voice you just heard was that of a woman named Cindy Anthony, mother of Casey Anthony, the daughter that she wants to press charges against. It's hard not to feel like when you're listening to that call that it is the voice of a mother being like, I've had enough. this time I'm calling the police.
Yes, and I know parents who have done that, especially about stolen cars. I'm not saying it's something any parent takes lightly, but sometimes, I've witnessed that path be taken. However, the order in which she gives the information is very bizarre.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if it's a bad connection. You can obviously hear it's not the clearest call. I don't know if she can't hear what the guy's saying, but she doesn't answer the questions in a very sensical way.
No, she's just like, I want to bring someone into your facility. And he's like, okay. Like, why would you not say my daughter's stolen my car and I need to press charges? That would have made the whole thing a lot quicker, but it's almost like she doesn't want to give the game away somehow.
It's almost like she doesn't really want to do it. She's just doing it to scare Casey.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like I don't really know what she wanted it to achieve, but it's kind of like she's giving these like breadcrumb bits of information.
I think it's exactly that. I think it's like, I don't actually want to call the police on her because she's my daughter, but I'm doing it to be like, are you listening? Are you listening to this, Casey? I'm calling the police.
Right.
I've had enough of this.
Right.
So, this man that she calls at the sheriff's department then tells Cindy that she's come through to the wrong number, so he has to transfer her. I'm going to play the part when he's transferring her just because I want everyone to hear what Cindy says to Casey while the transfer is happening.
Okay, so Casey's physically there.
Casey's physically there. Right. That's what I'm saying. It's like she's looking at her and being like,
okay.
Are you fucking listening? I'm calling the police. I've had enough of this. Right. So everybody listen to this next part.
Because my next thing will be down the trial thing, and we'll have a court order together. If that's what you want to play, we'll do it. And you'll never. Well, then you have on one day. No, I'm not giving you another day. I've given you a month. All right.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I think that is a very important part. It may not seem obvious right now exactly what's going on, especially if you don't know this case. Also, full disclaimer, Hannah's obviously read the script that has been written by me. I don't know why I said it so cryptically, but she hasn't heard the calls or listened to the interviews that we are going to be playing throughout these 2 episodes.
I think I might need to be sent to Spooky Bitch Jail because I actually don't know this case particularly well.
But I think you and I are both not particularly interested in these huge, well-known cases often. Why I say that is because I'm really interested to see your reaction as somebody who sees these interviews and hears these calls for the first time.
Okay.
As some of our listeners might be. So I think if she seems shocked by it, it's because she is.
Yeah, no, I'm not just doing an excellent acting job.
I've heard it all 50 million times by now. So yeah, that part of the call when Cindy says, just in case you didn't catch it, Cindy says, next I will be going to child thing. I guess she means Child Protective Services. And she says, I'll get a court order to get her. I've given you a month. And Casey says, give me one more day. Everybody remember that. This is when Cindy is now on the phone again to 911.
911, what is the address? What's happening?
I have someone here that I need to be arrested in my home.
They're there right now?
A possible missing child. I have a 3-year-old that's been missing for a month.
A 3-year-old?
Yes.
Have you reported that?
I'm trying to do that now, ma'am.
Okay, what did the person do that you need arrested?
My daughter.
For what?
For stealing an auto and stealing money. I already spoke with someone. They said they would patch me through the Orlando Sheriff's Department, have a deputy here. I was in the car. I was going to drive her to the police station, and no one's open. They said they would bring a deputy to my home when I got home to call them.
So she stole your vehicle?
Yes.
When did she do that?
On the 30th. I just got it back from the impound. I'd like to speak to an officer. Can you have someone come out to my house?
Okay, I got to ask you these questions so I can put them in the call, okay?
Okay. So now, obviously, you can hear there that Cindy says very clearly that there is a 3-year-old, a possibly missing 3-year-old, who's been gone possibly for a month.
Right.
Okay. Things are starting to get weird. But you will notice, and I think this is important to notice, that on this call, she seems calm. She seems very calm about the situation. She's not frantic. She hasn't seen her granddaughter in over a month, but she seems calm.
Stern, I would say, but can't. But I think you're absolutely right. I think it's very much the tone of the like, I'm not taking this from you anymore. You're pushing me to this point.
And it's important to say that the next call I'm about to play you is the third 911 call that Cindy Anthony makes that day. About an hour has passed between the previous call you just heard and this one.
911, what's your emergency?
I called a little bit ago. The deputy sheriff's not here. I found out my granddaughter has been taken. She has been missing for a month. Her mother finally admitted that she's been missing.
Okay, what is
here now?
Okay, what is the address that you're calling from?
We're talking about a 3-year-old little girl. So my daughter finally admitted that the baby's in the store. I need to find her.
Your daughter admitted that the baby is where?
But the babysitter took her a month ago that my daughter's been looking for. I told you my daughter was missing for a month. I just found her today, but I can't find my granddaughter. And she just admitted to me that she's been trying to find her herself. There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car.
Okay, what is the 3-year-old's name?
Caylee, Caylee, Anthony.
Caylee Anthony?
Yes.
Okay, is she white, black, or Hispanic?
She's white.
How long has she been missing for?
I have not seen her since the 7th of June.
What is her date of birth?
8/9/2000. Oh God, she's 3. She's 2005. So it's Caylee missing. Caylee's missing. Casey says Danny took her a month ago. She's been missing for a month.
Okay, I understand. Can you calm down for me for just a minute and I need to know what's going on, okay? I'm gonna try and talk.
What is it we can do?
Is your daughter there?
I'm on the phone with them.
Is your daughter there?
Yes.
Can I speak with her? Do you mind if I speak with her? Thank you.
I called them 2 hours ago. They haven't gotten here. She finally admitted to Danny took her a month ago. She's trying to find her.
Ma'am.
Okay, Danny Sheriff's Department. They want to talk to you. Answer the question. Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Hi. Well, can you tell me what's going on a little bit?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell me a little bit what's going on?
My daughter's been missing for the last 31 days.
And you know who has her?
I know who has her. I've tried to contact her. I actually received a phone call today, now from a number that is no longer in service. I did get to speak to my daughter for about a minute.
Okay, did you guys call and report a vehicle stolen?
Yes, my mom did.
Okay, so there's been a vehicle stolen too?
No, this was my vehicle.
What vehicle was stolen?
It's a 98 Pontiac Sunfire.
Okay, I have deputies on the way to you right now for that. But now your 3-year-old, okay, your 3-year-old daughter is missing. Caylee Anthony.
Yes.
White female.
Anthony. Yes, white female.
3 years old, 8/9/2005, her date of birth?
Yes.
And you last saw her a month ago?
31 days. From 31 days.
Who has her? Do you have a name?
Her name is Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez.
Who is that? Babysitter?
She's been my nanny for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years.
Why are you calling now? Why didn't you call 31 days ago?
I've been looking for her and have gone through other resources to try to find her, which was stupid.
Okay. Can you give me the name of the nanny again? Like spell it out for me?
Zenaida, Zenaida.
Last name?
Fernandez. -Gonzalez. I think the officers are here.
The officers are there?
Yes.
Okay, hold on a second. Don't hang up with me yet. I need you... Okay.
Yeah, you can obviously tell that things have escalated quite a lot.
Things have escalated, yeah, I think. But I think if I had to be in a room with Casey Anthony for 40 minutes, I would escalate also. Mm-hmm. It's so bizarre. Like, I just can't even get my head... Like, so Cindy's obviously, as you heard, I do think she sounds genuinely upset.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's the biggest shift between that hour, between the last call and this call. You can tell, I think in the last call, I think she thinks that Caylee is just somewhere. Kaylee's with a friend, Kaylee's with a neighbor. She just, Casey and Caylee have been missing for a month. Or not missing, they thought they were somewhere else. We'll go on to talk about that. So I think that Cindy genuinely just thinks Caylee's fine and she's somewhere else. In that 40 minutes to an hour is when she realises that Casey doesn't know where Caylee is.
Yeah, I think it's also a really important thing to stick a pin in at this point, is that on this call, Casey says that she has spoken to her daughter, who has been missing for 30 days. Conveniently, the number on which she spoke to her daughter the day this 911 call is being made is now out of service.
Yeah. Also, just in case it wasn't clear in the call, Cindy has to force Casey Anthony onto the phone.
Oh, yeah, she doesn't want to do it.
And she says, when Cindy says, it's the sheriff's department, they want to talk to you, Casey says, I don't have anything to say.
Which, when your daughter has been missing for 30 days and you are admitting that you haven't seen her in that time, I think I'd have quite a lot of things to say.
You'd think, wouldn't you?
I also think the 911 operator is doing a good job of like being investigative, which they don't always do.
Yeah, because this already makes no sense. And I think, yeah, absolutely, props to that 911 operator. Hello again.
We're back, and if you already know what we're going to say, shut up, no one asked you. It's British Podcast Awards Listener's Choice. We need your vote. We need your vote more than we have ever needed it before. Please go to British Podcast Awards /vote to place your vote for RedHanded as your favourite show. You don't have to be British. We just have to be, and we are.
And if you take a look at the nominees for the true crime category this year, once again, they are, of course, all mega corporate podcasts from the likes of the BBC, The Times, etc. No shade on them. I'm sure they worked incredibly hard, but we just don't get that recognition in any other category. So the only category we have any chance of winning and forcing everybody to take notice of RedHanded is the listener's choice. And thankfully, it is the only one that you guys can help us with. So please, 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 head on over to BritishPodcastAwards.com/vote. I'm sure the link will be in the episode description. If not, you can easily find it on the World Wide Webs. Please vote for us, verify that vote in your emails, and enjoy all the bonus content and extra RedHanded that will surely come your way as a result.
Would you believe us if we told you our podcast is haunted?
We didn't intend for this to happen.
No, we did not. But apparently spirits like listening to ghost stories too.
We bring you the creepiest, most unusual, and sometimes heartwarming encounters with the paranormal. Stories so chilling and so shocking that even the spirits can't help but hop on our mics and give us an occasional EVP.
But we aren't the only haunted ones. Listeners of this podcast report increased levels of paranormal activity.
Our podcast brings all the ghosts to the yard, and hopefully it brings you too. Tune in to Two Girls, One Ghost wherever you listen to podcasts. It's the most haunted podcast in America.
Very spooky.
So when the officers get there, they were met with absolute chaos. Cindy and her daughter Casey were screaming at each other. Cindy told the police that her 3-year-old granddaughter was missing and had been so for a month. So it's an important point to make. The officers haven't heard any of this because they didn't hear the most recent call that we just played you. So they're very, very confused about why these two women are shouting about a child and quite so upset about a car that has been salvaged. They thought they were there to deal with a domestic dispute about a stolen car and some money. But now there is suddenly a toddler up in the mix that no one has seen for 31 days. So the only thing they can possibly have been thinking is, what in the cinnamon toast fuck is going on? I've stolen that from our very big fan at Angry Black Lady on Twitter.
Well, there you go.
And Dwayne The Rock Johnson has liked the tweet. So, you know, we're in good company.
Maybe he'll like this. So when the police start to try and figure out what the fuck is going on, this is the story that they get. According to Cindy and her husband George, who is Casey's dad, on the 7th of June 2008, so about 6 weeks before this scenario is unfolding, Casey had told them, because she lives with them, Casey had told them that she was going out of town for work to Jacksonville, which is about 140 miles away from where the family lived in Orlando. And she told them that she was going to be taking her 3-year-old daughter Caylee with her. For the next 6 weeks, the Anthonys didn't see either Casey or Caylee. They spoke to Casey on the phone a few times, but whenever they called, and as grandparents would do when they asked to speak to their granddaughter, Caylee was always asleep or otherwise engaged. So they never spoke to Caylee. during that time. Then, on the 15th of July, the Anthonys said that they got a call from an impound lot telling them that a car registered to them, so that's the white 98 Pontiac Sunfire, had been found abandoned by a check cashing place in Orlando. Obviously, when they hear this, they're baffled and panicked because that was the car that Casey had taken to go to Jacksonville. Why was it in Orlando after 6 weeks, and why had it been abandoned?
They went to pick up the car from the impound lot and were shocked by the state it was in. The car absolutely stunk. This was a stench that Cindy Anthony described in her 911 call as smelling like, quote, a dead body. After they got the car back, they managed to track down Casey, who wasn't in Jacksonville at all. She was still very much in Orlando, at her boyfriend Tony Lazzaro's house. The Anthonys drove straight there and found Casey smoking weed and seemingly having a great time. They dragged her home, and that's when Cindy made the first 911 call. And as we said at the top of the show, this call is really trying to punish Casey. If you listen to it, Cindy is clearly very calm, stern, and she's being a disciplinarian to tell Casey that enough is finally enough. You can feel in that call that Cindy really thinks that Caylee's fine, just with a babysitter or a friend or whatever. But in the hours between the first and the third call, as Cindy says on the recording, Casey finally admitted that the nanny, who's unfortunately called Zanny, had taken Caylee and wouldn't give her back, and that she'd been missing for 31 days.
So when officers at the house questioned Casey, she told them that she had dropped Caylee off at her nanny's house on the 9th of June 2008. And then, when she'd gone to get Caylee that evening, as she did every single day, the nanny, a woman, as she says in the 911 call, is called Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez, or Zanny for short, had refused to give Caylee back. Casey then said that she tried to call Zanny again and again, but the phone had been disconnected. So Casey said that she then went and searched all the parks and the usual kind of hangouts that she knew Zanny the nanny took Caylee to, but there was no sign of them. According to Casey, she was now absolutely terrified, but needed time to think. And she said she knew she couldn't go home because she was scared of what her parents would say. So she went to her boyfriend's and didn't call the police. She said she didn't call the police because she was worried, if she did, that Zanny would have hurt Caylee. Interesting point, I think, to note here. She told her parents she was going to Jacksonville. She never went to Jacksonville, obviously. As we'll go on to see, that's all a big lie. So saying that she didn't go home that night because she was worried of what her parents would say, she had already planned to be away from them for a month. I think that's worth pointing out. I don't know. Premeditation is a word that will get thrown around a lot in next week's episode.
The police, just like you and just like me, just like us together, could hardly believe what they were hearing. Parents simply just do not wait for a month before reporting their child missing. So they were, of course, massively suspicious of Miss Casey Anthony. And they actually charged her at this point with child neglect and took her in for official questioning. At the station, Casey stuck to the nanny story. And here is a clip from that first police interview.
Day right now is July 16, 2008. The time right now is 04:11 hours. I'm Detective Mellish with the Orange County Sheriff's Office. I am with Casey Anthony, is that correct?
Yes.
Casey, you understand this is being recorded?
Yes.
You have any objection to that?
No.
All right. Casey, I got called here in reference to a missing child. You took Casey to a babysitter's house?
Yes.
And who was this babysitter?
Her name is Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez.
Okay. How long had you known Zenaida?
Almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years Christmas this year.
And where did you meet her? Who did you meet her through?
A mutual friend. His name is Jeffrey Michael Hopkins. I met him at Nickelodeon at Universal, and I met her through him. She was his son's nanny at the time.
Does Jeffrey still work at Universal?
No, he does not.
How long has it been since he left?
About 9-10 months, give or take. He moved up to North Carolina for a short time and moved down to Jacksonville within the last 3 months.
When was the last time you spoke with him?
About a week and a half ago.
Do you know a telephone number for him?
I can find a number for him. I don't know a number offhand. No, I do not.
So you met Zenaida through Jeffrey Hopkins?
I did.
And
yes.
his son Zach Hopkins, I guess. Zenaida used to watch over Zach?
Yes.
And when did she start watching over your child?
It's been within the last 1.5 to 2 years that she started watching Caylee.
How would you normally drop off, or how would you normally do the exchange with your child and Zenaida? Would you drop the child off? Would she meet you somewhere?
I would usually drop her off. For a few months, we would go over to Jeff's house. He lived over in Avalon Park.
And you would go to Jeff's house, why?
To drop off Caylee. That's where Zenaida would go to watch both of the kids.
Okay.
It was in a nice centralized area. He had a decent sized house. It was good room for the two of them.
Go back to your statement. You dropped off Caylee June 9th, and walk me through. You dropped her off to go to work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Get off of work and go from there.
I got off of work, left Universal, driving back to pick up Caylee like a normal day, and I show up to the apartment, knock on the door, nobody answers. So I call Zenaida's cell phone, and it's out of service. I didn't really want to come home. I wasn't sure what I'd say about not knowing where Caylee was. Still hoping that I would get a call or, find out that Caylee was coming back so then I could go get her. And I ended up going to my boyfriend Anthony's house, who lives in Sutton Place.
Did you talk to Anthony about what happened with Caylee?
No, I did not.
Have you talked to anyone about Caylee, about your incident with Caylee? Or the fact that she's missing?
A couple people, a couple mutual friends.
Who did you talk to about it?
I talked to Jeffrey Hopkins.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to Juliette Lewis. She's one of my coworkers at Universal.
She works. You still work at Universal?
Yes.
What do you do at Universal?
I'm an event coordinator.
Okay. What is Juliette? What position is she? Where she works?
She's also an event coordinator. We work in the same department.
You have a number for Juliette?
Offhand, I can't think of one.
Is she in your SIM card?
No, she's not. Some of the more recent numbers, her number just changed because she just moved back up north. She, within the last 2 months, has finished moving up to New York. She's subleasing her apartment.
So Juliette doesn't work at Universal anymore?
No, she does not.
What's the reason, I asked you this before and I'll ask you just for the record, what's the reason you didn't call the police before?
I think part of me was naive enough to think that I could handle this myself, which obviously I couldn't. And I was scared that something would happen to her if I did notify the authorities or got the media involved. Just the fear of the unknown, fear of the potential of Caylee getting hurt, of not seeing my daughter again.
I asked you this at the onset and asked you before we went on tape, and I'll ask you again just to make sure we're clear. Is there anything about this story that you're telling me that is untrue? Or is there anything that you want to change or divert from what you've already told me?
No, sir.
Did you cause any injury to your child, Caylee?
No, sir.
Did you hurt Caylee or leave her somewhere and you're worried that if we find that out that people are going to look at you the wrong way?
No, sir.
And you're telling me that Zenaida took your child without your permission and hasn't returned her?
The last person that I've seen with my daughter, yes.
Is she Puerto Rican? Is she Dominican? Is she white?
She's mixed. She's black and Puerto Rican.
Is there any underlying cause to why Zenaida would have taken your child?
Nothing that...
Did she ever make any statements to you about...
Only how much she loves Caylee and how great of a kid she is.
And when you talk to Jeffrey afterwards, I'm assuming that Jeffrey's child is still with him?
His child is still with him.
You said Zenaida had family up in New England, up in New York or something?
Yes, she has family down south. Her mother, her sister, her brother's in New York. She's originally from New York. Pretty much grew up there, moved down here, went to the University of Florida.
I mean, I don't think she knows the definition of mutual friend.
No, I mean...
Who, mutual between who? You and Caylee? You and the nanny?
The thing is, what she's saying makes no sense. But how calmly she delivers it.
And just straight off the bat.
And
no hesitation.
So effortless. And also, because of the way she delivers it, outside of the context that nothing makes sense, it sounds so believable.
Yeah, it's not until you really break down what she actually says and you're like, wait a minute.
If you didn't know the case.
No.
If she was saying something else, you would just be her delivery. Everything makes it seem completely believable. It's remarkable. I've never seen anything like it. She truly is in a league of her own. Obviously, spoiler, she's fucking lying her ass off.
Yeah, like when he's like, is there anything about it that's untrue? He should have just said, is there anything about what you just told me that is true?
Yeah.
Because the answer is a big fat no.
No.
The only thing that is correct is that her name is Casey Anthony.
Yeah.
So the police now need to find these people. They needed someone who could corroborate Casey's story, establish a clear series of events, and of course, help them to find Caylee. At first, Casey took the investigators from random address to random address, seeming confused and surprised when it turned out that the people she claimed lived there didn't.
Yeah, she's basically like, oh, no one I know that you could easily find, like my boyfriend or my parents or anybody else who's real. I didn't tell any of them. Didn't tell any of them, even though I went straight to my boyfriend's house after I realised that Caylee was missing. I told these other people, like Jeffrey Hopkins and Juliette Lewis, that you now need to go find.
She'd even sent the police to an address claiming that it was the home of Zanny the nanny. But when they got there, the flat was completely empty. And obviously, there are a lot of things about Casey Anthony that don't exactly make her mum of the year. But if I was entrusting someone with my child, I think I would quite like to know their address. And I would like to know that they actually lived there. And I would like to know that they have a phone that is connected.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the problem is that Casey says, this is definitely Zanny's apartment. And she's like, yeah, I dropped her off here all the time. But it's like,
right.
No, you didn't, because
she's not here.
She's not here. And also,
and actually,
the flat's completely fucking empty.
It's not even that Zanny the nanny may have lived there and may have vacated. The owners of the building said that absolutely no one ever, not never, had lived in the building called Zenaida. So she was never there. Zanny the nanny never, ever lived there.
No one named Zenaida lived there. No one had lived there for months.
Yeah, so she's literally, just like you heard in the call, the rate and consistency and confidence that she comes up with these complete fabrications. Like, she's literally just spitting addresses off the top of her head.
Oh, yeah. Even when the police confront her with what for other people would be irrefutable evidence. For example, she says, this is Zanny the nanny's house. This is Zanny the nanny's apartment. They go there, fucking apartment's empty. And she says, well, no, this is definitely where I used to bring Caylee. And the police go speak to the building apartment. They're like, no one's lived here. They even pull the CCTV and said, for the day you said you dropped her off here, you're not on the CCTV. At the times you said you were dropping her off. In fact, you weren't here at all that day. And she's like, no, I was definitely here. And it's just like, what do you do with that?
You can't do that much with that, to be honest.
This is the problem. That's her tactic. So the police were obviously growing incredibly frustrated. So they told Casey to take them to Universal Studios because, remember, she's saying Juliette Lewis plus another colleague, they were the ones that she had told. And Jeffrey Hopkins, of course. So they're like, take us to Universal and let's talk to the people that you apparently told contemporaneously about Caylee's disappearance. So they all go to the offices together. And once they get there, Casey walks straight up to a security guard and tells this security guard that she needs to take the police in to speak to Juliette Lewis. She also reels off a bunch of other names. The security guard was totally confused. He couldn't see any of these names on the employee database, and he kept telling Casey that she wasn't even listed as an employee. But Casey didn't back down, and she kept telling the man to call her supervisor. She even gave a name and extension number for her boss. So this is like causing quite a scene. This attracts the attention of a manager. The manager is equally confused by the lack of names on the employee database. But I think he's just kind of keen to help because Casey's screaming about the fact that a child is missing and there are 3 senior detectives standing there. So this manager tells the security guard to just let Casey and the officers in. For the next 25 minutes, Casey walks these 3 detectives around the building. And while she's doing so, she's even waving at people saying hi. Eventually, she heads down a corridor that ends in a dead end. At this point, and this is what the detective said happened, she put her hands in her back pockets, sighed, laughed, turned back to look at them, and said that she didn't actually work there after all.
To be fair to Casey, which is, I promise I will never say that again, the one place where you can wave at people you don't know and they will wave back is Universal Studios. Maybe even Disneyland. The people who work there will wave at fucking anyone. So she's got that. She's smart.
But she's in the corporate offices as well. Fine. Whatever. They'll wave back. They'll not wave back. The fucking gall on this woman.
Yeah. The audacity.
My God. Can you imagine? I think this is one of the things that is the most shocking about this case. And I think one of the reasons that people are so obsessed. People lie all the time. It's not the lies that's shocking. It is Casey Anthony's ability to withstand that level of pressure.
Yeah.
The extent to which she can push a lie. It's like, and we'll say this again because it comes up so many times, she will take it to the absolute end. She will take a lie to the absolute end until she knows she can't lie anymore. And then she'll be like, okay, fine, you got me.
She could be a master of industry. Like, she could rise to the top in quite literally any profession.
She needs to be a spy.
Yeah, and nerves of fucking steel.
It's truly remarkable.
So, Casey shrugs it off. She admits she's never worked there. But the thing is, the detectives who were accompanying her through her little tour of the Universal Studios corporate offices already knew that. When Casey wasn't able to give them the phone numbers or addresses for Zanny, Jeffrey, Juliet, or all the other co-workers that she made up and told about Caylee's disappearance, the detectives had done good detecting and had gone to Universal Studios themselves before they went there with Casey to see what they could find out. And what they found out was pretty bizarre. Casey hadn't worked at Universal Studios 2 whole years. Jeffrey Hopkins hadn't worked there for 6 years. And no one named Juliet Lewis had ever worked there at all. And when Casey had worked there, she hadn't been an event coordinator like she'd been telling everyone. She worked on the photo kiosk at the Incredible Hulk ride.
And I think this is also the thing we have to say of, like, she told her parents she was going away for work to Jacksonville for 6 weeks. She wasn't, because she didn't have a job at that point.
No.
So again, you have to ask, why is it during a time when she already planned to be away from her parents and be away from that house for 6 weeks, it's during that time that Caylee goes missing?
Yeah. And it's also, I think it bears repeating, the speed she comes up with the name Juliet Lewis. Completely confident. And no one at Universal Studios has worked there by that name, which is just astonishing. 2 things. A word of advice, ladies. If a man on Hinge says he is an event coordinator, he's a barman. I learned that one the hard way. No shade on barman, just say what you are. Secondly, how does someone who works on a kiosk in America where minimum wage is extremely low afford a private nanny? Do they not have play groups? Is there not group situations for the babies?
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. She didn't have a private nanny, and she told everyone she was an event coordinator, not someone working on a photo kiosk. There is no nanny.
There is no nanny. Okay, right, I'm with you. So the answer is she can't afford it and she didn't have one.
And this is the thing, again, talking about the ability to which Casey Anthony is able to carry out a lie and the amount of, I don't even know what the word is, like the extent to which she's able to go to, the pressure she's able to endure. Because, remember, she lives with her parents and she hasn't worked at Universal Studios for 2 years, but they didn't know she was unemployed.
Mm-hmm.
That means that Casey Anthony was getting up every morning, getting dressed, getting Caylee dressed, taking them both off somewhere, telling her parents she was leaving Caylee with the nanny, but there is no nanny. So where were her and Caylee spending all day, every day?
Mm-hmm.
And then she'd come home in the evening and be like, I've been at work. She did that for 2 years without a job.
Wow.
This is what I'm saying. It's madness.
There was someone I used to work with when I worked in bars who, for a good 6 month stint, was sleeping in the bar and no one found out.
Wow.
Like, through a very unfortunate series of events, they'd ended up without somewhere to live.
Yeah.
And they would just, because chefs get in fucking early, they'd sleep there, leave before the chefs got there, walk around town for a couple of hours and then come back.
This is the thing, it's so tragic. And that is obviously a different situation because it's somebody trying to fucking get by and manage a horrible situation. This situation with Casey, she could have gone and tried to get another job.
Yeah.
She doesn't. We know she's unemployed, as we'll go on to talk about.
I think it's just like, I was quite close to that person at the time that was happening and I had absolutely no idea. It's always quite shocking when you when you see something like that, I think.
Yeah, and I think, again, you know, in that situation, it's like somebody trying not to share what is obviously a horrible situation. Here with Casey Anthony, her motivations for lying are complex.
So most of it's made up, but the police did actually manage to track down this Jeffrey Hopkins character, who apparently didn't even know anyone named Zenaida Fernandez-Gonzalez, let alone have a nanny by that name that he had then introduced to Casey Anthony. But it gets even better than that, because guess what? Jeffrey Hopkins, of working at Universal Studios 6 years ago fame, didn't even have any fucking kids.
And as you will have heard in the interview, she's like, yeah, she used to watch Jeff's kid, Zachary. He hasn't got any fucking kids. She's just making this all up on the spot.
I kind of wish I could do that. She'd be great at improv.
Mate, there you go.
Get her on SNL.
The Casey Anthony improv group. Can you think of anything worse? I can't. So yeah, the police discover that Jeffrey Hopkins hasn't worked at Universal Studios for 6 years. He doesn't know Zenaida Gonzalez, and he doesn't have any children, let alone a little boy named Zachary. And when they talked to Jeffrey, he told the police that he hadn't spoken to Casey Anthony in years. But Casey had told the police that she'd spoken to him just a week and a half before she was being interviewed. Once again, lies all over the place. And also, the police weren't able to find anyone named Juliette Lewis who worked at Universal or otherwise connected to Casey Anthony. Detectives by this point were beyond confused. Why was she lying? What the hell was going on? And you might be thinking, why were the police, when there's a child missing, wasting time with these kind of games? Why did they, if they already knew that Casey Anthony was lying about working at Universal Studios, why did they let her go on that little charade of like walking them around for 25 minutes and then, getting her to admit it in the end? Well, firstly, and the police detectives admit this there's quite a few documentaries, you'll be unsurprised. I'll link all of them in the episode notes. But the police say that because of how relaxed Casey was, like in that first interview, on that 911 call, she's so like relaxed and like reluctant to talk to them and not really like how you would expect a parent of a missing child to be. They actually thought that Caylee was probably alive. They actually thought, this woman is so calm, this mother is so calm, something can't be wrong. She knows something and she knows their child is safe.
Yes, I agree.
Which I think is a reasonable conclusion to. I don't think it's necessarily right because we know that people like Casey Anthony exist, but I think it's a reasonable thing that they thought. So basically, they suspect that Casey was hiding Caylee somewhere. They had seen firsthand how volatile the relationship between Casey and her mum Cindy was, and they actually thought that Casey was hiding her daughter Caylee away from Cindy to just like punish her or do something or keep her away from her. That's their theory. But since Casey wouldn't give them anything in interviews, like she doesn't break, she doesn't crack, she doesn't deviate from her story, she just keeps going regardless of what evidence they confront her with. So I think the police were basically like, we need to do something to try and shake her. We need to catch her in a massive lie, like at Universal, so that we can force her to tell the truth. But nope, not with Casey Anthony. And when she turns around in that pivotal moment and tells them, all right, fair enough, I don't actually work here, the police immediately arrest her and take her to a room in Universal Studios. They don't even bother going to the police station. They take her to a room immediately in there and interview her. And we're going to play a clip now from this interview. And you'll hear now that the police are much more aggressive with Casey Anthony.
Since I left you this morning, I've gone to every address that you've told me. I came over here, I've already talked to all the employees. I found out all these names that you're giving me are people that either never worked here or have been fired here for a long time ago. Okay, so where we are right now is in a position that doesn't look very good for you. Because obviously, I know, and you know, that everything you told me is a lie, correct?
Not everything that I told you.
Pretty much everything that you've told me, including where Caylee is right now.
That I don't know where she is.
Sure you do. And here's,
absolutely
listen,
do not know where she is.
Let me explain something. Looking at you, I know that everything that you've told me is a lie. I am very confident, just by having talked to you the short period of time, that you know where she is.
I legitimately have not seen my daughter in 5 weeks. I didn't let anything happen to her, except I trusted her with somebody that had been taking care of her, that had been taking good care of her. Someone that she was comfortable with, that I was comfortable with.
What about Jeff? You said Jeff worked here until about 2 months ago?
No, he hasn't worked here for quite a while.
10 months? How long?
It's been at least 10 months.
Okay. He got fired in 2002. He hasn't been an employee here since 2002.
We put a lot more together than I think you realize we put together. My question to you is, we're in this office because our purpose in coming here was to do what?
I'm trying to think of places where I know she's been.
You're not answering my question. Do you want us to help?
Yes,
you want to help us find your daughter?
I do want you to
Well,
help.
a good starting point would be to answer the questions, okay? If I say to you, we're here because, and then you just ignore that like I never asked it and go off in some other direction, is that answering the question?
No.
Okay. Well, let's go through this again. We're here because?
Because I lied, because I brought you up here, and honestly I was reaching for
No, stop right
avenue.
there. I want you to tell me how lying to us is going to help us find your daughter.
It's not going to.
Well, then if the main thing you want to do is find your daughter, and you don't think lying to us is going to help us find her, why would you do that?
Because I'm scared, and I know I'm running out of options. It's been a month.
What are you scared of?
I'm scared of not seeing my daughter ever again.
I'm a parent too. I would have been beside myself.
I have been.
I would have called the police immediately, and that's the part that I just don't understand. Well,
I
we've
didn't know
got so
what
many
to do.
resources out there that we could help on day one.
You didn't know what to do.
I didn't know what to do. At that point, I'm thinking, okay, they haven't been gone that long. Maybe I can find them. Maybe I can track them down.
We're not stupid, okay? And what you're doing right now is you're treating us like we're stupid. Everything that's coming out of your mouth is a lie. Everything. Either you gave Caylee to someone and you don't want anyone to find out because you think you're a bad mom, or something happened to Caylee and Kaylee's buried somewhere or in a trash can somewhere, and you had something to do with it. Either way, right now, it's not a very pretty picture to be painting. You're painting yourself as a very bad person. It needs to end.
The truthful thing is that I have not seen my daughter. The last time that I saw her was on the 9th of June.
Remember we had those two people that we were talking about, the person who had an accident and a person who's just a cold-blooded, callous monster? That's telling me that you are the second person, this cold-blooded, callous monster who doesn't care and doesn't want to help because she's afraid that something so heinous happened that everyone's going to look at her and say, she's a monster, she deserves to go away, she deserves to never see the light of day, this bad thing should happen to her. I don't want to believe that right now, but you're giving me no choice. Tell us what happened to Caylee. Tell us what happened to Caylee.
I dropped off Caylee. And that's the last time that I've seen her. I dropped her off.
Where did you drop her off?
I dropped her off at that apartment.
No, you didn't.
That's exactly where I dropped her off.
Did you just think that one day she's just going to show up at your house?
No, I sat around yesterday trying to figure out what to do. I'm glad that I ended up seeing my mom, that all of that stuff happened. It happened for a reason because
you're glad you saw your mom. You could have saw your mom 5 weeks ago and said, Mom, I don't know where.
I saw my mom's reaction right off the bat, and it would have been the same from the get-go.
So wait a minute, you're more afraid of your mom's reaction than you are if you ever see your daughter again?
No, I'm absolutely petrified. Absolutely petrified. I know my mom will never forgive me. I'm never going to forgive myself.
Is it that there's some other thing more important in your life right now that you just weren't really focused on what you were saying when you told us, so you kind of just accidentally told us you had an office here and we needed to be here, or did you purposely mislead us? Which of those two is it?
I purposely misled.
Okay, so you purposely misled us. This was all an attempt to help find your daughter, right? That makes sense to you, correct?
In a backwards sort of way, yes.
Backwards sort of way?
I'm coming back to places that are familiar to me, that I know are familiar to her. Familiar situations that maybe, just maybe would help. She's almost 3.
She's almost 3. What, do you think she's going to take a cab here? I mean,
I know
how do you think she's going to get here?
Because she's with someone else.
She's with someone else who's hid her from you for 5 weeks.
Yes.
Why would a person who has hid your daughter from you for 5 weeks, okay, bring her to the building that you used to work at?
I don't know what else to do anymore. If I knew where she was, if something would have happened, I would have admitted that a long time ago.
Do you believe thinking up more lies to tell us will help us?
Yeah. She's with someone that I absolutely do not trust, and that I'm absolutely scared that
you don't trust yet was babysitting your daughter for a year.
I don't trust her now because of what happened.
Who did you call first? Who did you go to for help first to help try to find her?
No one.
Oh, no one. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'm glad we got that straightened out.
Jesus.
I don't even know where to start.
I think, it's the first thing that jumped out at me listening to that is when she's like, I'm running out of options.
Mm-hmm.
So what outcome did you want? What are your other options, Casey?
I just don't know. And she's just like, oh, I'm just saying random fucking shit, like coming back to familiar situation. Like, what?
I won't say that she's completely emotionless because I do think, obviously, the detectives are ramping up the emotion.
There's 3 senior detectives going hard at her. This is an interrogation now. This isn't an interview anymore.
Oh, no, absolutely. But
and she's still like, I dropped. They're like, tell us what happened to Caylee. Tell us what happened to Caylee. You won't be a bad mother if you tell us what happened, is basically what they're saying. And she's like, I dropped Caylee off on the 8th. And you're like, oh my God, how?
Oh, totally. That she's still lying through her teeth, but she does, in all of the other calls that I've heard of her, her tone doesn't change at all.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, it slightly changes.
It
She drops
changes,
her
but
volume.
But she's worried about herself.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that
yeah,
she's,
yeah.
you know, she's having like a mea culpa moment or feeling any particular emotions at all. I think what she's doing is like, okay, plan A isn't working. Let's move into plan B, the emotions phase. But she's not hysterical.
No.
And
they
I think
confront her with the fact that Jeff, this is when you hear her be confronted with the fact that Jeff hasn't worked there. And she's just like, okay, let's move on.
Yeah. And she's, it's just bizarre. And like having literally just done a case on catastrophic false confessions.
This is exactly why I said it last week.
It is astonishing. How old is she? Fucking 22?
She's 22 when this interview is happening.
Oh my God.
This is what I'm saying. She does not stop. She doesn't stop. And when she says the thing of, I'm actually glad I ended up seeing my mum and all this has happened. Her mum dragged her out of her boyfriend's house while they were all sat there smoking weed 31 days apparently after Caylee went missing. And she's like, I'm actually really glad that happened. What? It's weird because in one frame, I feel like she knows exactly how to come across. She's young, she's attractive. If you watch her in the interviews, not this one because this is like, you know, much more heated. In the earlier interviews and when the detective plays nice, she knows how to behave, right? So you know she knows how she's coming across. But it's also at the same time, it's like she has no idea how she's coming across when she says these lies.
I can't figure out whether she has spent her life 3 steps ahead of everyone else or she's so stupid she doesn't know the difference. I don't know. I'm split. I have no idea which one I think it is.
Well, we're going to go on to talk about Casey's earlier life. I'll save my assessment for then.
Hold it in.
Again, 3 senior police detectives being not, I wouldn't say aggressive as like a bad word, but like they're going hard because enough is enough. There is a 3-year-old missing. So they're doing what needs to be done. And she's just like, no, I dropped her off.
Yeah. She doesn't panic, doesn't lose her cool. And I think if you really listen to it, it does kind of feel like the tail's wagging the dog a bit.
This is exactly what I was going to say. Although there are 3 detectives in there who have found out a lot about her lies. They are ahead of her. They knew about the lies at Universal before they even took her there. But it still feels to me like Casey is the one in control of that interview because she just doesn't care. She has a real almost a lack of shame. Like if I was caught out in that many lies, I would be so embarrassed that I would crumble because of that. She just has no sense of like shame. I'll keep going. It doesn't matter. Oh, you found out that's a lie. Doesn't matter. I misled you. Yes, I brought you here. I misled you. Carry on. What's next? It's remarkable.
She's the Pied Piper, I think. And it's because she just doesn't even answer the questions.
No.
She's just like, this is my narrative.
That's what the detective says. He's like, she just pretends like whatever they say doesn't matter. I'm just going to keep saying what I'm saying.
But regardless, after this interview, the police arrested Casey, hoping that this would scare her and that she'd finally just crack and tell them everything, tell them where Caylee was. But again, it was a big fat nopity nopington from Casey Anthony.
So the next clip we're about to listen to is from the one phone call that Casey Anthony was allowed after her arrest. The first voice you're going to hear is Casey's mum, Cindy.
Casey?
Mom.
Hey, sweetie.
Oh, I just saw your nice little cameo on TV.
So the nice little cameo on TV she's talking about is just before she's allowed to make this phone call, she watches the news and sees her mum go out there and talk about the situation, as you would fucking expect when there's a child missing.
But it's also weird for a mum to pick up the phone to her daughter who she suspects of squirreling away her granddaughter with "Hey, sweetie."
Oh, yeah. And also the fact that Cindy goes and does a press conference to try and find Caylee. And Casey's words are, I just saw your nice little cameo on TV.
What do you mean, which one?
Which one? I did 4 different ones, and I don't know. I haven't seen them all. I've only seen 1 or 2 so far.
You don't know what my involvement is and stuff?
Casey.
Mom.
What?
No.
I don't know what your involvement is, sweetheart. You're not telling me where she's at.
Because I don't f***ing know where she's at. Are you kidding me?
Casey, don't waste your call to scream and holler at me.
Waste my call sitting in the jail?
Whose fault is you sitting in the jail? You're blaming me that you're sitting in the jail?
Not
Blame
my
yourself
fault.
for telling lies. You mean it's not your fault? What do you mean it's not your fault, sweetheart? If you'd have told them the truth and not lied about everything, they wouldn't...
Do me a favor, just tell me what Tony's number is. I don't want to talk to you right now.
I don't have his number.
We'll get it from Lee because I know Lee's at the house. Get Tony's number for me.
Hey.
Okay. The call continues. We're going to break it down, though, because she speaks to 3 different people during this call. So that was her conversation. First conversation she has after being arrested with her mum. The level of anger she has at her mum for going on TV, I understand because her mum's obviously gone on TV and says that she doesn't know Casey's level of involvement in things.
I would be upset if my mum said that about me.
You would be, rightfully so, but I think, again, everybody let's remember this call, because Cindy goes on to have quite a change of heart, as we'll discover. But right now, we all just heard it, plain as day. She says, I don't know what your level of involvement is in things, darling, or sweetheart, or whatever she fucking says. Then she says, if only you told them the truth instead of lying about everything. Let's remember these things, because she's singing a different tune later down the line. I think the relationship between Cindy and Casey is one of the most interesting parts of this case that I think is quite often, definitely in the documentaries, overlooked. Purely because, and I understand why they're doing it, they want Cindy to be involved in the documentary. Cindy and George, Casey's dad, they're in all of the documentaries being interviewed. Obviously, if you start criticising Cindy, she's not going to do that. I'm not saying for a second that I think Cindy is involved in Caylee's disappearance, but the relationship there is interesting. Also, you will have noticed that Casey was like, get me Tony's number. Pay attention to the next bit. The next voice you're going to hear is Casey talking to her brother Lee.
I can do that. I don't know what real good it's going to do at this point.
Well, I'd like to talk to him anyway.
Okay.
Because I called to talk to my mother, and it's f***ing waste. Oh, by the way, I don't want any of you coming up here when I have my first hearing for bond and everything else. Like, don't even waste your time coming up here.
You're making it real tough for anybody to want to try to... I'm not going around and around with you. That's pretty pointless. Christina would love to talk to you because she thinks that you will tell her what's going on. Frankly, we're going to find out. Everything
I have no clue where Caylee was. If I knew where Caylee was, do you think any of this would be happening? No.
Anyway, you only got a couple minutes for this, so I'm not going to let you completely waste it. Here's Christina. She thinks she can get through.
Even Lee, her brother, is like, it's all going to come out. Just tell us. And she's just like, no. And her singular focus is getting Tony's number.
I kind of, obviously, don't know the guy, but I kind of rate her brother for being like,
oh, yeah.
You're making it extremely difficult for anybody to want to help you.
This is because Lee has grown up in that house, right? We're going to talk about this later, but the dysfunction in that family is rife, particularly the relationship between Cindy and Casey, like we said.
Okay.
And I think that Lee is a man who has grown up in that environment. He knows his sister. That's why he's not yelling at her. That's why he's not like, tell them the truth like Cindy keeps doing, because he knows that's not going to work. He's just like, this is making things very difficult. It's all going to come out in the end. Those are lines I feel like Lee has said before to his sister.
That's how it sounds. He sounds like a tired man.
He does. So he basically gives up and he hands over the phone to Christina, which is the next voice you're going to hear in the next part of this phone call. Christina is Casey's best friend. The first time I heard this exchange, my jaw dropped open a little bit.
Oh, I want Tony's number. I'm not talking to anybody else. Hello? Hi, I'm glad everybody's at my house. Do me a favor, get my brother back because I need Tony's number.
Does Tony have anything to do with Caylee?
No, nothing.
Okay, so why do you want to talk to Tony?
He's my boyfriend, and I want to actually try to sit and talk to him because I didn't get a chance to talk to him earlier because I got arrested on whim today. I just want to talk to Tony and get a little bit of...
Casey, you have to tell me if you know anything about Caylee.
Sweetheart,
if anything happens with Caylee, Casey, I'll die. You understand? I'll die. If anything happens to that baby.
Oh, my God. Calling you guys? A waste. Huge waste.
It actually makes me sick, that part of the call.
Yeah, I feel sick and sad at the same time. Skiff sad. Christina sounds nice.
Yeah.
Christina sounds like a mother in anguish.
Yeah. She's like, if anything happens to that baby, I'll die. And Casey goes, oh, wow. Oh, my God. Are you fucking serious? It's unbelievable.
It's like, why are you inconveniencing me with your emotions?
Get me Tony's number. I need to talk to my boyfriend. So her only concern at this point is not finding out where Caylee is, not figuring any of that out. She needs to explain to her boyfriend what's really going on so that he doesn't, freak out that his girlfriend's been arrested. It's shocking.
Yeah, it truly, truly is. So this call is made from a jail, which the police can obviously hear. They have recordings. They are aware that all of this has gone on. So obviously, given how batshit fucking mental that call was, it set off major alarm bells in the police station. Who was this Tony character? And why did Caylee need to speak to him quite so urgently? And just in case you'd forgotten, dear listener, dear sausage, dear spooky bitch, Tony is, of course, Tony Lazzaro, Caylee's boyfriend of but a few weeks. He's not Caylee's dad.
No, he's a new boyfriend.
He's brand new.
Exactly. So obviously, after listening to that phone call, and given the urgency that Caylee showed in wanting to speak to Tony, the police are highly suspicious of this Tony character. They think that he's involved somehow. So the police track him down and turn up at his house. And Tony Lazzaro, honestly, his life, he doesn't take part in any of these documentaries, he doesn't take part in anything. And I don't blame him because his life was dragged through the fucking shit because of this case. I'm going to say it out now, like, I don't think Tony had anything to do with fucking anything.
Yeah, I think I'm probably on your team there.
He's just like a stoner college kid. That's what Tony Lazzaro is, right? So Tony hasn't got a fucking clue what's going on. And according to him, Caylee and he had started dating in like the end of April 2008. They used to hang out at his, watch TV, and go partying together. Tony, aside from being a student, was also a Florida club promoter who ran classic club nights such as That's Dope Fridays.
I have a confession to make.
You've been to That's Dope Fridays?
No, it's worse. When I was a student, I promoted club nights.
Oh, what's the best named one?
Fuck Me, It's Freshers.
Excellent.
I thought that would be a really good idea. To like meet people, make friends.
Yeah, that is a great idea.
Unless you go to SOAS, where nobody wants to go to Fuck Me, It's Freshers. They want to go and learn Iraqi dancing. So I made no friends.
Oh, mate.
Actually, it was worse because I tried to flyer this guy and he ripped up the flyer in front of me and he was like, I'm really not used to girls giving me flyers that say fuck me on them.
Yeah, not with that attitude. You should be so lucky. Fuck off.
It was so embarrassing that I just deleted my boss's number basically and I didn't even pick up my money.
No, do you know what? He's embarrassing. Those students are embarrassing. Call yourself a fucking student. Get in the bin. I hate it.
Yeah, it was actually, I've just been overwhelmed with a wave of anxiety just even telling you it. It was so awful. But, you know, we grow, we move.
I hate that guy.
Yeah, no, I can see his face so clearly. And then I was in a tutorial with him for the rest of the year.
Mate.
Yeah, it was bad. It was really bad. I'm sweating.
I'm never going to complain about my uni ever again. Ever again. Jesus, these people. Shut up.
Yeah, it was bad.
So, after 3 weeks of Tony and Caylee's love affair, apparently Caylee had introduced him to her daughter Caylee. And then Tony said that after the introduction, that Caylee would basically come to the house about 3 times a week with her mum. Tony and his housemate both said that as far as they could see, Caylee had been a great mum, that she and Caylee had a really strong relationship, and that she really looked after her. And this is the thing, I think sometimes people do want to, because Casey Anthony is such an unlikable character, they do want to ignore anything that could be slightly positive. And as far as all of her friends, and Tony and his housemate, with who she spent the majority of her time, and probably where she spent most of her days when she was pretending to be at work, said that Caylee was incredibly intelligent. She was taught a lot by Caylee, and that Caylee wouldn't allow anyone to smoke around her. Like, she was a good mum visibly.
Right.
During that time, as far as everyone could tell. And then, and this is according to Tony, apparently in about mid-March, so about 6 weeks before the police turned up at his door, Caylee, who had still been coming over daily, suddenly stopped bringing Caylee with her. And this ties in with the timeline of Caylee's disappearance as told by Caylee. But, interestingly, Caylee never even once mentioned to Tony, her boyfriend, the love of her life, the man she has to speak to urgently, that Caylee was missing, or that she'd been kidnapped by her fucking nanny. She spent the next 31 days at this guy's house and never said that. And this is the man that she'd basically moved in with for the month that Caylee was missing. And Tony tells all this to the police.
And according to Tony, during that time, Caylee hadn't seemed sad or concerned or worried about anything. She'd been in the time of her life. She doesn't have to go to work. She can just smoke weed all the time.
No kid to look after.
Living the life. So now the police were absolutely convinced that Caylee had done something to Caylee. And their suspicions were only confirmed when they examined the car that had been picked up by the Anthonys from the impound lot. As soon as the detectives walked into the garage it was being kept in, the smell of death and decomposition hit them right in the face, which if you've ever smelled it, if you ever walked past a disemboweled dead fox, you know what that smell is, and it smells like nothing else. A cadaver dog was brought in, and in a move that surprised absolutely no one, the dog alerted its handler to the boot of the car.
Let's explain. Boot equals trunk. I won't say trunk, it's boot.
When police examined the boot of the car, it was definitely where the overwhelming smell was emanating from, but you could also tell that someone had tried very hard to clean the car out. But try as they may have done, they did not do a particularly good job, because on the carpet of the boot there was a massive dark stain. Forensics also managed to collect several human hairs from the boot.
So when the stain on the carpet was tested, it was found to have very high levels of chloroform present. All the hairs that were found in the car were also DNA tested. The problem was that the hairs that were found didn't have like the root.
The follicle.
The follicle. Well, I feel like, is the follicle the bit in the head? So anyway, they didn't have the bud, whatever it is, that comes out of the head with the hair if it's pulled. And because of this, the hair could only be tested for mitochondrial DNA. And this type of DNA, we've talked about it before, is the type of DNA that's passed from the maternal side. And so analysis of the hairs that were found in the boot were only able to tell detectives that it either belonged to Cindy, Casey, or Caylee.
Which, considering their family car, is no good to fucking anyone.
It's not. The other thing they were able to tell, though, the colour of the hair, which was like a sort of soft brown, the length of the hair, and also the fact that the hair hadn't been treated, so it had never been dyed or bleached. And both Cindy and Casey has dyed hair and Cindy has bleached hair, led them to conclude that it was most likely going to be Caylee's. The hair also showed banding. And this is something we haven't come across before.
No.
So,
educate me, Dr. Barla.
So, PMRB is post-mortem root band. And apparently, after someone dies, if you observe hair under a microscope, you will see an opaque band, like a dark band, that runs near the root areas of the hair on a decomposing body. So if you compare hair pulled like from a living person or pulled from a dead person where decomp has started, you will see like a black band along the head.
Right.
On the hair. Right. And it's not well understood. They actually don't understand why this happens. So I can't tell you guys why that happens. But what I can say is that you're not going to see that banding on hair where the body hasn't started to decompose.
Okay.
It's called post-mortem root band.
So not only can they make the logical assumption via a process of hair, it's a bit of a Legally Blonde moment, isn't it? Of hair dyeing elimination, they know it's a dead person's hair. So they know that it is most likely to be Caylee's hair, and the person the hair belonged to is dead.
Was in the stages of decomposition.
In the car.
Dead. And in the car, because the hair, or the hairs were found in the boot. So the connection they're making is exactly what you just said, Hannah, that Caylee's dead, mitochondrial DNA will only take us so far, but because of the treatment of the hair, we can assume it's her. The banding shows that it came from the head of somebody who was decomposing, and they were found in the boot of the car. So they're saying, that says we can say that Caylee is dead, and she was in the boot of this car. So the car really does become a key piece of evidence. And in fact, George Anthony, Casey's dad, he was an ex-police officer, which just makes this whole thing get better and better. And when the car, because remember, he and Cindy go pick up the car first, and he actually told the police, he took them aside and told the police that he had, quote, bad vibes when he'd got the car back. George also told police, and this is recorded in a fucking police interview, quote, where this is headed, I don't like it. I don't want to believe that I could have raised someone who could have hurt another person. George Anthony breaks my heart in this entire... They fucking just destroy this man. My heart breaks for him.
By now, investigators had also heard the third call that Cindy Anthony had made on the night of the 15th of July, and they had heard her say, the car smells like there's been a damn dead body in there. Just a little fun factette for you. Cindy Anthony is a registered nurse, which means she would have known exactly what human decomposition smells like. She'd even worked in a morgue, so...
Yeah. So ex-cop and nurse, pick up a car, and they're both like, smells like there's been a dead body in here. I don't think you can get much better than that.
No, I don't either. Cindy doesn't seem to see that as a particular problem because she admits the fact that she's a nurse and she knows what a dead person smells like. She tells that straight to the police. But when they press her about the statement she made about the smell of death on the 911 call, Cindy changes her mind.
This is where the U-turns begin from Cindy.
The lady is very much for turning, it would seem. Cindy now said that, quote, smells like there's been a dead body in there is just a turn of phrase. Which it is, but when there has actually been a dead body in there, that is quite a specific thing to say.
This is the thing, though. They don't have the evidence to prove that there's been a dead body in there.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the hairs, they have the stain. They can't prove it. They can't definitively prove there's been a dead body in there.
Yeah.
But we heard the phone call from Cindy Anthony. It does not sound like it's a turn of phrase. She also later says, when they call bullshit on that, she says, I said it because no one had come to the house after 2 hours of me calling the police, and I said it as a way to get somebody there immediately.
So yeah, she's just saying that, you know, whether there really was a dead body or whether it was just a really horrible smell, there was a horrible smell, and Cindy felt like she had to explain that somehow, and she chooses to explain it by saying the smell must have come from the bag of rubbish that had been in the boot of the car. When the Anthonys picked up the car, there had indeed been a load of rubbish and a half-eaten pizza in the back, and they decided that that must have been the source of the odour. I do not have the tidiest car in the world. I think having a car is like having a giant handbag. I would never leave half a pizza in my car. That is absolutely vile. If you've ever done that, you're going to jail.
Well, this is the thing. Basically, when they pick it up from the impound lot, there's like a bag in the back, just like torn open rubbish, half-eaten pizza, maggots, whatever. How it gets there is an interesting part of this story. Because where the car was picked up by, it was next to a bunch of massive bins. So I suspect what happened. Casey Anthony tries very hard to clean up this mess. She realised she can't get rid of the smell. We'll talk about what our theories are.
Oh, okay.
She picks some bin bags out of the rubbish, sticks it in there, hoping that will mask the smell of decomposition and death, and that she'll be able to explain away the smell that way.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that's not a hot take. That's like quite a common theory that is out there.
But still, I won't believe for 1 second that registered nurse Cindy Anthony would be confusing the smell of a mouldy pizza and some maggots to that of a literal dead body. So I think it's pretty safe to assume at this stage in the game that Cindy Anthony, Casey Anthony's mum, knew by this stage that something had probably happened to Caylee, and that Casey knew what it was and was involved in it. But Cindy can't face up to it. And like she's done so many times before, Cindy fell into her default mode of protecting her daughter Casey at all costs.
So let's take a little look at the relationship between Cindy and Casey Anthony, because like I said, I think it's very interesting, and I also think it's very important in understanding both of these women's behaviour in this case. In all of the documentaries, Cindy claims that she and Casey were super close, making out like it was one big lovey-dovey family. And I'm sure, you know, to give Cindy some credit, that that's what most people would do. No one's going to sit there and air their dirty laundry in front of the world. You're always going to put the best face on. But the thing is, it's just not really true. When she was 17, Casey was about to graduate from high school, as far as her family knew anyway. But in actual fact, Casey hadn't been going to class for quite some time. And on the day of her graduation, the school had called the Anthonys and told them that because of this, because Casey hadn't been turning up to class, that Casey wouldn't actually be graduating.
I have a recurring stress dream that is the same thing. It's usually that I have mixed up my scheduling on my timetable. So I need to do, it's always a chemistry module. And I never go. I never go to this chemistry module. And then I'm terrified that I'm never going to graduate from university. And it always takes me a good 20 seconds when I wake up to remind myself that I'm 31 and I've had a degree for quite some time and it had nothing to do with chemistry.
There you go. Very similar to what Casey's actual situation was.
Yes.
Because when her parents confronted Casey with this, she just blamed the school. She said that they had mixed up her timetables and that she'd been accidentally missing classes because they double booked her. That's why they were telling them that she hadn't been going to classes. It was all the school's fault. Now, I don't think Cindy's stupid. She's not stupid.
No.
She knew her daughter. But I also think that Cindy, I will not think, I know because of what happens next, appearances are very important to Cindy. So she told Casey to carry on as normal, accept her graduation gifts from friends and family, and just to tell everyone that she'd graduated. So they don't, like, hold her accountable.
Someone I went to university's parents did that.
Yeah. They don't hold her accountable. They're not like, well, you're just going to have to go to those classes you mixed. Even if you want to be like, whoever's fault it was, you need to sort this now. Because you're literally not going to graduate from... We don't do that here, but I think it's a big thing in America. No one gave me a fucking present for leaving secondary school. But anyway, like, she won't graduate. And they don't make her go back and do it. They just say, tell everybody you did.
Mm-hmm. The girl, similar thing, that did that at my university, her parents actually staged a false graduation shoot so she could send pictures to her family.
Wow.
Yeah, parenting.
Well, we're not a million miles away from this because the Anthonys actually threw Caylee a big congratulations party and buried the whole thing.
Soon after this pretend graduation party, when Caylee was 19 years old, she started putting on some weight, particularly around her stomach and reproductive area.
On her uterus.
On her uterus. Her uterus was getting extremely heavy with life. In the documentaries, they make it sound like Caylee just went and told her mum that she was pregnant and that it was all lovely and magical and everyone loved each other and held hands. In reality, according to actual family members, like my homeboy, Caylee's brother, Lee, who I think is the only person in this situation who has his head screwed on at all, Lee says that Caylee actually hid the pregnancy for as long as she possibly could. And when Cindy found out, because she is not an idiot and secondly a nurse, that both Cindy and Caylee joined forces and continued to lie about the pregnancy. At family parties, people would congratulate Caylee on the baby, but then she and Cindy would both pretend that Caylee was just bloated. Of course, she wasn't. On the 9th of August, 2005, Caylee Anthony gave birth to a little girl that she named Caylee Marie Anthony. This makes me very uncomfortable. She says, so at the hospital, when Caylee is giving birth to Caylee, Cindy was the first person to hold her granddaughter.
Yep.
That is gross.
Who the fuck allowed that?
I don't know. I do not know.
But I can imagine Cindy. Look, I know Cindy is also a victim in this. Like, she's lost her granddaughter. But we can't ignore the backstory or the relationship between the two of them.
Cindy doesn't hide the fact that she's done this. She actually says in one of the documentaries that she did feel a little bit guilty, but she just couldn't help it. Just had to hold her. It was like having Caylee all over again.
The level of, like,
yeah.
I mean...
There is a Facebook group called Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers, and it is full of stuff like that. Like wearing white to a wedding day, stealing children, making a parent feel guilty for not giving the grandchild to them, essentially. Honestly, it's absolutely brimming with stuff like that.
And presumably, appearances.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see here, just from those two examples that we know about, that there is a lot of enabling behaviour going on. They never hold Caylee accountable. And I really couldn't help but think, and again, I don't think Cindy was involved in anything. I think she is absolutely devastated by the loss of her granddaughter. That is absolutely clear to see.
Agree.
But I couldn't help thinking, during some of the phone calls, during some of the jail visits, which we'll go on to listen to at the end of this episode, when Caylee is speaking to her mother in the way she speaks to her, that it is the sound of a monster eating its creator.
Yes, I think that is spot on.
Yeah. So the other question that does get talked about a lot in this case is, who was Caylee's father? We don't actually know. Caylee said at first that it was a man named Jesse Grund, who she was in a relationship with for the majority of her pregnancy, but it turns out it wasn't him. She then said it was another man who later died in a car accident, also turned out to not be him, and to this day, we don't know who Caylee's father was or is. After Caylee was born, Caylee and Caylee both lived with Caylee's parents in Orlando. And from the outside, I think the situation looked pretty normal for the next 2 years. The only thing is, obviously, we know, listeners and us, that for those 2 years after Caylee was born, Caylee just been pretending to go to work. So once again, I just think her being able to tolerate that level of deception is unbelievable.
Yep. On top of this deceit upon lies upon confusion, Caylee was also stealing from her parents, her brother, and her friends all of the time because she had no job, which famously means you have no money. But Caylee couldn't ask for money because everyone thought that she had a job. But obviously, most people knew that something was off. Even Cindy admits in the first 911 call that the stealing had been going on for quite some time.
Again, it's just like the level of willingness they all have to just bury their heads in the sand. Why is your daughter stealing money if she has this big job? She doesn't. And you know that. They know that. But they're just like, well, I'm just going to fucking think what I want to think. I'm just going to see what I want to see.
Yeah, no, exactly. Print the myth.
Yeah. Live the myth is the fucking words on the doormat at the Anthony household.
Print the myth. I'm going to get that on my doormat. At the moment, it's just hedgehogs, which my sister thinks is juvenile, but she can shut up. So some parts of the life at the Anthony's family home was true, however, how difficult it may be for you to believe at this stage in the game. In the evening, Cindy and George, or Cece and Jojo as Caylee called her grandparents, would dote on the little girl. And I think that it was in order to avoid losing little Caylee and to avoid losing face socially that Cindy and George allowed all of Casey's bullshit to continue. It's a golden sword of Damocles to be holding over your parents, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she'd literally come home from work and be like, do you want some, like, grandma time? Here you go. I've been with her all day. Why, you thought I was at work?
Yeah, right. And now I'm going to go off and smoke weed.
Again, with the weed smoking, I do want to make this point just because we'll go on to see next week that they make a big deal of, like, Casey drinking a lot, partying a lot, smoking weed, blah, blah, blah. That's actually not who Casey was. Like, when she was a teenager, she was actually the mother of the group, is how all of her friends described her.
Really?
And that's how she was known. She was actually often the designated driver when they went out. She wasn't a partier, really. She didn't actually even smoke weed. Those things started, or were starting, around this time. We'll talk about that more next week. We have to be fair about these situations, and she wasn't a big partier prior. So if you think all of this is not weird and enabling enough, let's listen to our next clip, because I think it really shows you the level of dysfunction in the family, and it shows you kind of the dynamics, I think, very clearly. And the clips we're about to listen to are from a jail visit between Cindy, George, and Casey after she's been in custody for about 2 weeks.
Hi. Sweetie, we've been watching you for so long.
You haven't?
I love you.
I love you too. Hi.
We've been seeing you sitting down.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was talking with one of the doctors.
We forgive anything that you've said.
Oh,
or done.
Hold on. Can we turn the volume down? Yeah, you can probably hear it. My head's gonna explode. I haven't said anything. Don't worry.
It is kind of loud.
Yeah. Okay. Is that better?
Casey.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Sure. Just a little bit more. Yeah. Okay,
that's good, honey.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. I just talked to Lee.
I know. He told us.
Yeah, we got cut off within our last minute, but we at least got a chance to cover a lot of stuff in our hour, so.
That's good.
What's that T-shirt? I didn't get a chance to ask him, other things
Caylee's
besides.
picture's on the back.
Is it? Can Dad show me the shirt?
Yeah, turn around so she can see. It's the Never Lose Hope Foundation. Do you see it?
I can see part
picture?
of it, yeah.
Have you seen me? And then it has the information on how to contact.
Okay.
Casey, you don't realize that the whole United States is looking for our Caylee.
I know that, Mom.
Her cover's going to be on People magazine in a few days.
Okay.
Everybody is looking for her.
Good.
Everybody is looking for her. Are we going to be able to find her, do you think?
I hope we can, Mom. Now, I didn't get a chance to ask Lee.
Can you look up a little bit more? Raise your eyes up a little bit. There you go. So now, look straight up so I can look into your eyes, darling. Thank you. I need to do that. Please look up, sweetheart. I need to see your eyes.
I want to be able to look at you guys, too. I can't look at you and look at the camera.
Well, you don't have to look at the camera. Look at me.
I'm looking at you.
Okay.
You're sitting very low.
I know.
Your head's about this much in the TV.
I know, again, the lack of emotion, people deal with stuff differently. But her dad's literally wearing a T-shirt with a picture of her missing daughter on it. Nothing. She's just like, okay. And then I think one of the most telling parts is when Cindy keeps telling her everyone is looking for Caylee. She's going to be on the front cover of People magazine, which is a fucking massive magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, okay.
It's a national.
Good. And then, I don't know if you saw, there was, I will post the video linked so you guys can watch this. I've watched it a fucking million times and it's like an hour and a half long. but it's worth it. When she says that, Casey goes, ugh. She sounds irritated that people are looking. She sounds annoyed. She doesn't sound like, oh, thank God, you'll be on the front cover of People Mag. Like, people are looking great. This is what we need to do. This is where we need to be focusing. This is who we need to speak to. She's like, okay, fine. Okay, good. She sounds worried.
She sounds inconvenienced.
And I think this becomes quite a repetitive part, and you'll definitely hear more of this in the next clips. When Cindy says to Casey, are we going to be able to find her, do you think? What does that sound like? Why would you ask that? How would she know if she's got nothing to do with it? Are we going to be able to find her, do you think?
I think, as a mother, which obviously I'm not, but the way I envision that situation going is if your daughter is in jail for something she didn't do, she's innocent and you know it, wouldn't you be reassuring her? Wouldn't you be like, it's going to be fine, we're going to find her? You wouldn't be like, do you think we can find her?
We'll find whoever took her. We'll get you out.
We'll get you out, yeah.
There is some of that. This call, like I said, it goes on for about an hour and a half. And it flip-flops between them reassuring her and joking about, and like her making jokes about like eating bologna or whatever, to these moments that are very clear to me that the Antonys are like, we know you did it.
Right.
But also something very telling that listen out for in the next clips is it's just they pussyfoot around it. They tiptoe around it. They never want to confront her outright. Why? Like, why would a parent be scared of a child? That's a person who has had a violent temper in the past.
Oh my God, yeah.
Why would they be scared of her like this?
Because she's manipulative, because she's probably made their lives a living hell, all of those things.
Yeah.
A lot of people are scared of their children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also, the thing that's weird, and again linked to parents knowing what type of child they've got, when Cindy keeps saying, you know I need to look in your eyes when you're talking to me, that is a mother who thinks that their child is a liar.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I'm not reading too much into that, am I? Why does she keep saying it? She keeps saying it.
No.
Look in the camera.
It's been addressed before.
Yeah.
You know why I have to? Because you lie all the fucking time.
Exactly.
And I can only tell if I'm looking directly into your brain.
And I can tell. So let's listen to the next bit.
All I'm trying to do is find Caylee for both of us.
Oh, I know.
For all of us. And I'll do whatever it takes.
I feel the exact same way. That's exactly what I've been saying. I don't care what I have to do. When I told them I would lie, I would steal, I would do whatever by any means to get her back. That's exactly how I feel. It's the truth.
Casey, we have to find her before her 3rd birthday.
Mom, I know
that's coming up fast.
I know, we have a couple weeks.
I don't want to wait another minute, let alone...
I don't want to wait another minute. I want her to be found, whether I'm still stuck in here or not. I don't care.
I think once she's found, then you can tell everybody what you know, and you'll be released. Don't you think?
Potentially, I don't know. Yuri has it set in his mind that I've done something.
Well, he thinks you guys did something to Caylee.
Hey, can you hold on for a second?
Yeah, well, don't waste our time.
I'm not going to. I'll be right back.
Why would she do that?
Again, it's not them saying, Casey, tell us more about the nanny. They do go on and do that later, but I don't believe them when they're asking her about the nanny. They're like, we need to find her before her 3rd birthday. Do you think we're going to be able to do that? I want her back now, Casey. They're talking to her like she's got her because they know she knows.
Yeah. Don't waste our time.
Yeah. And then she's like, well, Lee thinks I've done something. And it's like, he thinks you guys have done something to Caylee. And they are convinced. There's also parts of this interview where you can tell that the parents think that Tony was involved because they say Tony has admitted to the police that there were drugs at his house. So what they think has happened, I think they believe this to the end, or they want to believe this to this day, is that Caylee was at Tony's house, put something in her mouth, died, and they covered it up to not have to deal with it. And they keep talking about that. You can hear, they're not like, where else should we be looking?
Yeah.
They're like, you tell us, Casey. I want her back before her 3rd birthday. It's really heartbreaking. When Cindy says, that he thinks you guys have done something. She just gets up and walks off for 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's worth pointing out for the people listening at home. Yeah, she fully, as soon as that sentence finishes, she's just like, wait a second.
Yeah.
And then she just leaves.
She leaves, and I counted it was for 3 minutes. And Cindy says, why would she do that? And apparently she says something like, for her own protection, when there's like rotation of calls going, Casey's in protective custody, so she's taken away from everybody while the phone rotation is happening. But it is quite a convenient time.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's listen to this next bit. This bit is Casey talking to George, her father.
I know this might be a tough thing to answer.
No, go ahead.
But did you borrow something from anyone or remove it without their permission that Caylee might be being held for?
No.
I know that's a tough question, sweetie, but I just need to ask you.
It's not a tough question, Dad. I mean, Mom knows the stuff that I had taken from her. We discussed that, on numerous occasions. And with Amy, I mean, I feel guilty about that. I feel extremely...
So when she's talking about with Amy, I feel extremely guilty about that. That is a friend of the family's that Casey stole her checkbook and wrote herself a bunch of checks. Yeah. So basically, she has a long history of stealing money, stealing checks, stealing cars, whatever she needs to, because obviously she doesn't have a fucking job. And you can hear very clearly George being like, has Caylee been taken because of something you've done?
Mm-hmm.
Again, they're not like, we know it's not you.
Yeah.
They're like, we think it's you, we just don't know why.
But I was under a time of desperation.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that with time of desperation? I don't understand.
Like I said to you, well, I said to Mom, and Lee and I have spoken, and he advised me of something which is very smart. The written contact will be better than anything that's going to be recorded, since we can't speak openly, freely, in person.
Okay. Well, I don't want to take time then going into anything else, and I want you to know, is there something that I can do for you, sweetie? I mean, I want you out of here.
I know, I want me out of here too, as quickly as possible, but at the same time, I know that until we get the bond lowered as much as possible, which is probably going to take a lot, the police aren't going to drop any charges. That's pretty evident.
Well, can I share something with you?
Yeah.
The longer and longer this drags on,
the harder it's going to be.
There's going to be maybe additional things that might hit everyone, and I don't want to get into that with you, but it's getting very, very crucial that we've got to get you out of here. If I could get you out of here right now, I would. But I want Caylee back, too.
That, again, Caylee is my concern. If I have to stay in here outside of that, if I can get out and then have to come back, I'll deal with whatever I have to myself that in regard to me.
Well,
I want to be out.
I want you to know, I want to take your pain away from you. So, you can tell me anything.
I know that, Dad.
I miss you, sweetie.
I know that. I miss you, too.
I wish I could have been a better dad and better grandpa,
You've been a great dad, and you've been the best grandfather. Don't for a second think otherwise.
Well,
you and Mom have been the best grandparents. Caylee's been so lucky. Caylee is so lucky to have both of you. I can't even put into words how glad I am that she's had both of you. And that she still has both of you.
It goes without saying, that our house is empty without both of you there. It's empty. All the little things that we took for granted, we miss them so much.
That's exactly how I feel.
All your little things and all her little things, it hurts. We're not there. Good to say we gotta support each other from here on.
Or at least spend a moment with you the day of the hearing.
4 hours a day,
I got threatened the other day by Detective Melich about they were going to send a squad car to visit Grandpa regarding the date, because it's the 15th that, we tape recorded Grandpa. And I felt just a teeny bit of what you may be going through, Casey, about trying to protect someone that you love so much. So I want you to know, I don't know where you're coming from, as far as I don't know the circumstances. But I know the mother that you are and the person that you are. And I know you're doing whatever you need to do to protect. I hope you're just protecting Caylee. Don't worry again about protecting your dad or me or Lee. You understand?
Yes.
We can handle anything.
This sounds like a case for the grammar detective.
Which bits? I'm so lost.
Because she mixes up tenses.
Oh,
it's your favorite
sorry.
thing.
Yeah, no, that I'm overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed. Yeah, I don't even know where to fucking begin with this. Let's talk about the mixes. Because she says it. She says, keep saying it. I'm so glad she had you. I'm so glad she had you. And then she catches herself immediately and then says, and I'm so glad she still has you. Again, she instinctively knows to fix it. And she does it 3 times, which is very telling. And again, I feel like the Antonys, fucking, they're giving it everything. They're trying every
I love George.
Mate, George, I just feel, he just absolutely breaks my fucking heart, honestly. But again, you just have them being like, when Cindy is saying stuff about the police going to her father, so Casey's granddad's house, and threatening to go and question him and stuff. And she's like, I feel how you might be feeling. Are you trying to protect somebody? Again, they're like, are you protecting Tony? Like, this is the narrative. And again, George being like, you can tell me anything. They know it's her. And again, I just want everybody to remember all of these phone calls for next week's episode. Particularly Cindy saying, if you are protecting somebody, you don't need to protect me. You don't need to protect your dad. You don't need to protect Lee. Remember that next week. I've just got one final clip and then we're going to wrap it up today because it's fucking making my head hurt. And I think this particular clip, I am going to load the dice before I let you hear it because I'm going to tell you what I think it means. But listen to what Cindy is saying. Really listen to what Cindy is saying. And remember to keep in your mind when you listen to what Cindy is saying that Casey has told her already, stop asking me certain questions because anybody could see this. Anybody could watch this because they will. Lee has said we should write everything to each other in letters. Casey tells them that. Casey tells them that during this call. So just think about what the subtext is of this part of the call.
You have to keep thinking positive feelings, Casey.
Oh, I know, I have been. I've been staying as positive as I can.
But do you think after this long she'd still be local?
There's a possibility.
What's your gut telling you right now?
My
You
gut's
have the
telling
same-
me that she's okay.
Okay. And your gut tells you that she's close or she's hiding?
She's not far. I know in my heart she's not far. I can feel it.
Okay.
I think that's a code.
Yeah.
Groundbreaking.
She's like, what Cindy's trying to do here is reassure herself that Casey is okay. And that she's nearby. And she's like, what is your gut telling you? Is she local? How the fuck would she know that? If the nanny's taking her, how the fuck would Casey know that?
To be fair, though, there are multiple interviews with What's-Her-Face McCann where she's like, I know she's alive, I can feel it.
Oh, that I can give. It's not what Casey even says.
No, it's
the
like
questioning from Cindy.
But where is she okay? Where is she doing the being okay,
What
Casey?
does your gut tell you?
Yeah.
No, I can absolutely understand a mother saying that. I know in my heart my child is still alive. I know in my gut my child is still alive. No one is going to ask that mother.
No, but where?
Do you think she's still alive? What's your gut telling you? Mother's intuition, of course, I believe that's a
true.
thing.
Yeah.
But nobody in an investigation
No, that's very true.
is going to be like, we've got nothing. What's your gut telling you, Mum?
Yeah, that's actually, I hadn't thought about it like that. It is information that is offered up freely. It is not questioned.
Yes. It is not something that you ask for when your granddaughter is missing.
No.
And the fact that Cindy is asking that is, again, I think it's Cindy being like, tell me she's okay. Tell me without telling me that she's okay.
Yeah.
And that's it. So, guys, that is where we're going to fucking call it a day today.
That is part 1
of Casey Anthony. We'll be back next week with part 2.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that.
You can find us here every week and then also every week over on Spotify at our other show called Sinister Societies, which is a Spotify exclusive. We talk about cults and shit, so go over there and have a listen to that. It really helps us out. So if you could do that. And also, the show is bagging. We're having a good time. And you can be a patron and you can come to our Christmas party, which is probably next week by the time you're listening to this. And you can do that at patreon.com/redhanded.
And also remember that we're doing the annual flash sale. Information for that, top of the show. Otherwise, I was like, next week. I don't fucking know.
No, it's top of the show. Top of the show. So we'll see you next week for part 2 and the last episode of 2021 because, I nearly said 2020 then, because we are taking 2 weeks off over Christmas, because if we don't, we will go quite literally insane and have to go and live in some sort of protected institution. And nobody wants that because there'll be no more Red-Handed ever. So 2 weeks off, no main show, no Under the Duvet, but we'll be back with an enormous bang in the first week of January.
Yes, and they'll still be in the news and the bonus episode for this month, so don't worry about that. And if you're like, I need some Red-Handed, go listen to Sinister Societies. It's basically the same thing. Bye.
Bye.
I'm Suruchi.
And I'm Hannah for the last time in 2021.
Yes, this is, as Hannah has given away...
Sorry, stealing your thunder there, sorry.
...final episode of Red-Handed for 2021. What a year it's been.
What a year. What a dish, what a dollar, as Megara says in Hercules. We said it all last week.
We did.
Yeah.
We're recording these back to back. It's Mega Caylee Day at Red-Handed HQ today.
Sue and I just went to go grab some lunch and actually spoke to each other for the first time in about 2 weeks.
I was like, oh, hello, you. How are things? What's going on with you? Those very important life things. I'm just like, you just come into the office and I just like look up, grunt at each other and then get back to work. So no, today has been a double Caylee Day, which is why we kind of said everything we wanted to say at the top of last week's episode.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you for being here, being loyal, being listeners, being lovely. We love you.
We most certainly do. And because we love you, we are not going to leave you hanging.
Before we get to that, just to point out some things that people were probably concerned about after last week's episode. I know I'm still in the past, but I presume this is what's happened. This is the last episode of 2021. But if you are a patron, do not worry. $10 and up patrons, you are going to be getting your December bonus episode next week on the Sodder Children, so do not worry. If you'd like to listen to that, head on over to patreon.com/redhanded and become a patron. And if you're a $5 and up patron, we won't be doing Under the Duvet for the next 2 weeks because we need a break, guys. We really do. But you will still be getting in the news the week after, so the last week of December. And that will hopefully keep you going. And if that's just not enough, and if you're not a patron and you don't want to become one, that's absolutely fine. We still love you. What you might want to do then is head on over to Spotify and listen to our Spotify exclusive show, Sinister Societies. It's just me and Hannah, and it's kind of just like Red-Handed, but we only talk about cults.
Yeah, exactly. What more could you want? It's for free. It's on Spotify. Bop on over there.
Yeah, and if you haven't listened to it at all yet, there's a big fucking back catalogue. So go listen to that, and we'll be back in January.
And if you also haven't listened to part 1 of the Casey Anthony Red-Handed Special, go back, because this probably isn't going to make sense anyway, but it will double not make sense if you haven't listened to part 1. So please go back and do that if you haven't already. This case is already enough as it is. So when we left you last week, and where we left Caylee was she was in custody, having been arrested in connection to the disappearance of her daughter, 3-year-old Caylee. Even after the arrest, and by this stage, months of scrutiny and time in jail, Caylee was sticking to her nonsensical story of Zanny the nanny having stolen her child. And we've got a police interview for you where Caylee gives a detailed history for Zenaida Fernandez-Gonzalez, the lady she claims is her permanent private nanny. Zenaida Fernandez-Gonzalez, Zanny the nanny, doesn't exist.
Just a reminder in case anyone forgot.
She never existed.
So let's have a little listen, shall we?
Yeah.
If we find that out, that people are going to look at you the wrong way.
No, sir.
And you're telling me that Zenaida took your child without your permission and hasn't returned her.
The last person that I've seen with my daughter, yes.
Is she Puerto Rican? Is she Dominican? Is she white?
She's mixed. She's black and Puerto Rican.
Is there any underlying cause to why Zenaida would have taken your child?
Nothing that...
Did she ever make any statements to you about...
Only how much she loves Caylee and how great of a kid she is.
And when you talk to Jeffrey afterwards, I'm assuming that Jeffrey's child is still with him.
His child is still with him.
You said Zenaida had family up in New England, up in New York or
yes,
something?
she has family down south. Her mother and her sister Her brother's in New York. She's originally from New York. Pretty much grew up there, moved down here, went to the University of Florida.
New York is quite famously not in the South.
Well, she has family down south. Her mother and her sister live there, but her brother's in New York, and she's originally from New York. But she went to uni.
Just the rate of making it up is great. She doesn't skip a beat.
No, she's black. She's half Puerto Rican. Yeah, what's next? What's next? You want a family history? Sure. What?
Here's their Ancestry.com profile.
Yeah. Mate, God, it is. It's unbelievable. Again, just in case anyone's forgotten, Zenaida doesn't fucking exist. But the police obviously don't know this yet. They don't know that Zenaida doesn't exist. And they have to, whatever they might think, they have to follow up on Casey's story. They have to look for this person, right? And interestingly, they did actually find a Zenaida Gonzalez living about 20 miles south of Orlando in the town of Kissimmee.
It's Kissimmee. And do you know why I know that?
Oh, I was listening to an American say it, and he said Kissimmee. Anyway, Kissimmee. What did he say? Anyway, whatever. That place. Sorry.
That's where my mum's houses are in Florida. So I have spent 7 Christmases.
How do I say it?
We've always said Kissimmee, and that's what the agency say.
Okay. It never comes up again.
It's, there's fuck all. Honestly, it's like, it's closer to Tampa than it is to Orlando, and Tampa is Tampa.
I have
full stop.
No concept of what's happening. But yes, so they find a woman named Zenaida Gonzalez living in this town. Again, like I said, 20 miles south of Orlando. So very close, very close. But this woman, she was middle-aged, not 25 like Casey had said about her nanny.
Really good Walmart.
Oh, really? Well,
I've never been in a Walmart I didn't like.
I don't think I've ever been in a Walmart.
It's like Costco, but crazy.
I've been in a Target. I have been in a Target.
I've been in a Target with you. You had a bad time.
Oh, yeah, it's very much too much. This woman, Zenaida, when the police went and interviewed her, she denied knowing Casey, Caylee, or anyone connected with the Antonys at all. And the police quickly released this Zenaida after it became clear to them that she had nothing to do with anything. And maybe you're thinking, well, that's only one Zenaida Gonzalez that they found. Maybe they should have kept looking. They only ruled this person out. Well, apparently, there were only around 200 women in the whole of the United States at the time with the name Zenaida Gonzalez. That's a nation of 330 million people.
She shot herself in the foot a bit with the name Zenaida.
This is the thing, is like, do you go Susan Smith or do you go Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez? I think, given how rare a name it was, as a combo name, the fact that the police found anyone with that name living nearby was frankly unbelievable. Again, some people might be like, how did they rule this woman out that easily? She was only 20 miles away. She's got the right name. Well, Casey Anthony couldn't pick her out of a lineup. So she's probably not a fucking nanny, right? I'm going to guess. And then whenever they confront her with the fact that they can't find anyone by this name, she's like, they're not searching the full name. They're only searching Zenaida Gonzalez. She goes by sometimes Zenaida Fernandez, sometimes Zenaida Gonzalez, sometimes all 3 names, and they're just not looking for her properly, is Casey's argument all the time. You couldn't make it up. So yeah, like I said, the fact that they found anyone by this name at all nearby was frankly unbelievable given those statistics. And now I know that we've already revealed to you the fact several times that there is no Zanny the Nanny. But if you think that is the end of the intrigue surrounding the name Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez, then you would be incorrect. But we're going to put a pin in it for now and come back to it later on this episode, because it's even weirder than you think.
What we need to focus on now is that the police by this stage were completely convinced that Casey not only had something to do with the disappearance of her daughter, they were convinced that Casey Anthony had killed her daughter Caylee.
Yeah, they've got the banding in the hair, they've got the smell. They're convinced that Caylee is dead and that if she's dead, that Casey's the one that did it.
And the people of Florida felt pretty much the same way. Every single night, Nancy Grace was hitting the screens across the state screaming, "Tart Mom!"
Yeah. This was her, catchphrase. This was her nickname for Casey Anthony. I don't get it.
I don't know.
Every mom is a top mom.
Yeah. Don't know. Maybe it stands for something.
Maybe. I don't know.
Too old to mom. I don't know. Sorry, Nancy Grace. You've lost me. You lost me a long time ago, to be honest.
She's out in full force on the Casey Anthony case.
Sure.
We'll come back to her later. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
And since public record laws in Florida are very, very open under the Sunshine Act, it means that the public and the media are given access to all 911 calls, all interviews, all videos from prison visits that pertained to even the tiniest corner of Casey Anthony's case. And obviously, when people saw these, they freaked out, and protesters actually began turning up outside the Anthony home every day. If you're even cursorily aware of this case, you will have seen the videos of this. They're very easy to find. It's full of very weird scenes of people going on banging on the Anthony's family home, screaming at them, physically fighting with lovely George. It's madness.
It really is. There's no other word for it. I'm just like, whatever your opinion is of what's happened, even if you think that the Anthonys, like as in George and Cindy, are involved, why you would take it upon yourself to turn up at their house and scream at them. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It's super common. I can't get into the mind of those people.
No, but it's a vigilante justice thing, sort of quasi-vigilante justice, like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
How do I make this about me?
Yeah, 100%.
If I'm the one that knocks lovely George out, then I've helped.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. It's fucking terrifying. So, in the meantime, while all this is going down, the police, believing that they had enough evidence from what they had found in the car, given the hair and the stain, etc., and believing that they had sufficient probable cause, charged Casey Anthony with murder in October 2008, 2 months after her initial arrest. By this stage, Casey had engaged the services of a then little-known defense attorney named Jose Baez. Jose Baez is going to become another key addition to our cast of crazy characters.
A major player.
A major player in this. So Baez, how can I describe him? He's like a smarmy bulldog. He's good at what he does.
Right.
And if I ever get charged with murder, I would like you to call Jose Baez.
Okay, done.
Right. I hate him, but he's very good at his job.
Okay.
Hello again.
We're back, and if you already know what we're going to say, shut up, no one asked you. It's British Podcast Awards, Listener's Choice. We need your vote. We need your vote more than we have ever needed it before. Please go to British Podcast Awards /vote to place your vote for RedHanded as your favourite show. You don't have to be British. We just have to be, and we are.
And if you take a look at the nominees for the true crime category this year, once again, they are, of course, all mega corporate podcasts from the likes of the BBC, The Times, etc. No shade on them. I'm sure they worked incredibly hard, but we just don't get that recognition in any other category. So the only category we have any chance of winning and forcing everybody to take notice of RedHanded is the listener's choice. And thankfully, it is the only one that you guys can help us with. So please, 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 head on over to BritishPodcastAwards.com/vote. I'm sure the link will be in the episode description. If not, you can easily find it on the World Wide Webs. Please vote for us, verify that vote in your emails, and enjoy all the bonus content and extra RedHanded that will surely come your way as a result. Hello again.
We're back, and if you already know what we're going to say, shut up, no one asked you. It's British Podcast Awards, Listener's Choice. We need your vote. We need your vote more than we have ever needed it before. Please go to British Podcast Awards /vote to place your vote for RedHanded as your favourite show. You don't have to be British. We just have to be, and we are.
And if you take a look at the nominees for the true crime category this year, once again, they are, of course, all mega corporate podcasts from the likes of the BBC, The Times, etc. No shade on them. I'm sure they worked incredibly hard, but we just don't get that recognition in any other category. So the only category we have any chance of winning and forcing everybody to take notice of RedHanded is the listener's choice. And thankfully, it is the only one that you guys can help us with. So please, 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 head on over to BritishPodcastAwards.com/vote. I'm sure the link will be in the episode description. If not, you can easily find it on the World Wide Webs. Please vote for us, verify that vote in your emails, and enjoy all the bonus content and extra RedHanded that will surely come your way as a result. So as soon as Jose Baez took over as Casey Anthony's lawyer, he began severely restricting her communication with investigators. Because up until this point, we could just make a 10-part series of us playing clips of Casey Anthony and being interviewed by the police. She just talks them constantly. She says nothing, but she constantly talks them and incriminates herself. Jose Baez puts a stop to that. And the police knew, despite everything they thought they had on Casey, if they were going to get anywhere with this case, especially on a murder conviction, they needed a body.
And enter my favourite name of 2021. On the 11th of December 2008, a city maintenance worker named Roy Cronk, wrong lever Cronk, pulled, not a lever, but he pulled over onto the side of the road and headed into the woods to relieve himself. Naughty Cronk. And that was when he spotted scattered bones lying in the undergrowth. Police could hardly believe it, the location was less than a quarter of a mile from the Anthony's home. I am more familiar with this particular area of Florida than I would like to admit. I have spent a lot of time there. And when they're saying woods, they mean jungle. Like, it is so dense. Like, you literally cannot see more than 2 feet. Like, it's the trees start and they don't stop.
They flip-flop between the terms woods and swamp.
Yeah, it's I can see it in my mind's eye. It's not somewhere you want to be. You just do not go in there, especially if you are me. So, this wood, swamp, jungle forest was literally down the road, and basically the first spot, if you left the Anthony's place, where there were no houses. This discovery spot also becomes very interesting later on, but just like with Zenaida Gonzalez's name, we're going to leave it on the pin cushion. When forensics teams arrived, alerted by Roy Kronk, they were led by the chief medical examiner, Dr. Jan Garavaglia, or, as she's known on her hit TV show, Dr. G. The remains were totally skeletonized and spread over an area of a few feet in the swampy jungle forest trees. It appeared to Dr. G that at one point the body had been inside 2 plastic bin bags and a large canvas bag. The remains had clearly been disturbed by animals, and the body also seemed to have been, at one stage, wrapped in a Winnie the Pooh baby blanket that was also found at the scene.
That bit just makes me so fucking sad.
Yeah, it's not great.
It's just so sad. So a week after the discovery of the body, Dr. G confirmed in a press conference that the remains were indeed those of Caylee Anthony. She also stated that the means of death, in her opinion, her professional opinion, she was ruling it a homicide. Dr. G admits in interviews that given the state of the remains, because remember, it's just bone, it's just dry bone. It's 6 months after Caylee went missing. We know no one saw her after she went missing. I think it's safe to say she died as soon as she went missing.
Yeah.
So she's been dead for 6 months. Because of the state of the remains, there wasn't much that Dr. G could do in terms of toxicology tests or identifying some sort of real cause of death. The bones showed no physical trauma, and there was no soft tissue left to examine. She stated that she had ruled it a homicide given the other surrounding circumstantial evidence, which a lot of people criticize, but that is literally the job of the medical officer. Like the chief medical officer's job, or the coroner here, is to look at the other circumstances, the way in which the body is discovered, where the body is discovered, all of these things, and to come to a conclusion that they think is the most reasonable conclusion. It's not her job to be like, well, I don't know, I've just got a bunch of bones. What are you looking at me for? So she doesn't overstep the mark. She rules it a homicide based on what she sees. And she says that the key pieces of evidence for the homicide theory were how well hidden the body seemed, and, crucially, the discovery of 3 pieces of duct tape stuck to Caylee's skull. The duct tape was found attached to her mandible or lower jaw, and Dr. G theorized that the duct tape was the murder weapon, and that the cause of death had most likely been suffocation. According to Dr. G, the duct tape must have been on Caylee's face when she died, because the mandible was still attached to the rest of the skull. Normally, when decomposition starts, the lower jaw falls off pretty quickly, because it's not attached by bone.
Oh, I don't like thinking about that.
Yeah, but it makes sense, doesn't it? If the mandible's still there, it wasn't put on afterwards, or it didn't just end up stuck there afterwards. It must have been there before the decomposition process started.
So what is holding it there? Like ligaments?
Yeah, like ligaments and muscle.
I saw a really horrible tweet the other day that's going to make you feel really uncomfortable, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
Excellent. I'm so glad I just ate.
It was one of those threads of what makes you feel the most uncomfortable. And one person tweeted that your bones are wet. All the time. They're wet all the time.
Stop it.
You're welcome.
I'm leaving.
Dr. G was also surprised to find that all of Caylee's teeth were still in place. Typically, with the remains of children that young, the baby teeth, since they don't have roots, fall out by that stage of decomposition. The duct tape having been wrapped around Caylee's face at the time of death, or very shortly after her death, so pre-decomposition, would have been the only way to explain the mandible and the baby teeth still being in place. It seemed like there could be no explanation for why someone would tape up the face of a child that was already dead. So it makes sense to theorize that the tape was therefore used to kill, not as anything to do with body disposal or something after the fact.
This is the thing. Basically, people will argue that the tape was just found at the scene of the crime and it got stuck to the skull. Because the skull gets tossed about by animals.
Oh yeah, there's fuckloads of animals in those woods.
Yeah, so some people will say, well, how do you know that the tape just wasn't in the woods and when a fox or whatever, I don't know.
You wish. You wish it was foxes, my friend.
Whatever, a fucking alligator came and like tossed this skull about. How do you know that the skull didn't fall on the duct tape and that's when it got stuck to it?
Yeah.
And Dr. G's point is it must have been there pre-decomposition, so at the point or shortly after death, for the mandible and the teeth to still be in place.
Right.
So that is her evidence for why she is saying, or that's her reasoning for why she is saying that the duct tape was the murder weapon, because it's over the mouth and the nose.
Dr. G also pointed the finger at Casey Anthony being the killer, and she did that by strongly suggesting that a stranger murder seemed highly unlikely. For example, the Winnie the Pooh blanket that was found at the body discovery site matched the theme of Caylee's bedroom. The canvas laundry bag, the one found at the scene, which it was assumed that Caylee was kept in, was sold in pairs from a local store, and the other half of that pair was found in the Anthony house. The duct tape also matched the type found at the Anthony residence, so they're not trying particularly hard.
And this is the thing, if you're saying she was kidnapped by somebody else somewhere outside of my house, again, I know none of this is like smoking gun, but it's pointing more and more at the fact that this happened inside the Anthony household.
So following these findings, Casey was charged with first-degree murder, and she spent the next 2 years in county jail awaiting trial.
And it was the trial that everyone was waiting for. It would be the trial of the century, as the papers reported. People were queuing up round the fucking block, like all night, like camping out to get tickets to get inside. I don't even, tickets, is that the right word? To get in.
Tickets.
Just some guy like selling tickets on the side, like touting these fake tickets. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy, like watching the people queue up. And also, fun fact, 40 million people watched it on TV.
Wow.
The population of the UK is like 66 million. That is crazy.
Yeah, that's fucking
3/4 of the population of the UK watched the Casey Anthony trial. And as you would expect with such a high-stakes case, the difficulties started straight away. The defence argued that there was no way that Casey could get a fair trial in Orlando. Everyone in the area had already decided her guilt. It was far too emotional, and there was no way that a jury picked from there would be impartial. So the judge decided, and I've never seen this before, maybe it's more common, but I don't know, the way that it's kind of spoken about makes it seem like it's kind of a weird move. Instead of moving the trial somewhere else, the judge decided to bring a jury in from out of town.
Oh.
From, I think it's Pinellas County? Let's go with that. From Pinellas County, Florida, to be exact, which is over 100 miles away from Orlando. So again, I think it's worth mentioning because 100 miles is not an insignificant distance. I don't know that people 100 miles away haven't heard about this case or watched everything just in the same way people in Orlando have. But also, what you're then saying is these people can't even go home that night after jury duty.
No.
They're now living there as long as this first-degree murder trial takes.
Yeah, so all they have to do is turn on the TV.
And also what I'm saying is like that's another level of stress that you're adding to an imported jury.
Yes, true, yeah.
And this is actually really funny. In some of the documentaries, there were, for all the people that wanted to get into the trial, there were some jurors that were like, I'm not fucking doing this because I don't want to be involved in this. I don't want to go live 100 miles away from my house. So there's this one guy that gets interviewed and he's like, I didn't want to do it. So I just started talking about it. And then they were like, you're getting fined in contempt of court and you're chucked off the jury. And he paid, I think it was like $4,000. He paid in fine. And they actually said to him, did you do this on purpose because you didn't want to do it? And he was like, yeah. And then he went home.
I wouldn't want to do it.
No. Even with this jury situation, as we've outlined it, the fact that these jurors are being imported in, they're probably very unhappy about this, given the fact that most people know about this case. The prosecution, I think, still thought that this case was going to be a slam dunk. But they had no idea what they were up against with the dream team that was Jose Baez and Casey Anthony.
In court, Casey, this is the oldest trick in the fucking book, turned up dressed very conservatively, hair up, no makeup, looking very plain. This image was clearly to contrast what she knew would be coming first, right out the gates, from the prosecution. The jury were shown a string of photos and videos from the time that Caylee was missing. They were all of Casey Anthony out at bars and clubs and seemingly having the time of her life. These images, which you can find very easily, Caylee is wearing very little. She's grinding about and looking pretty smashed. And apparently, during the month when she thought that Caylee had been abducted by her nanny, Caylee even took part in a hot bod contest.
Probably at That's So Dope Fridays, or whatever the fuck it was called.
Tony Lazzaro, her now ex-boyfriend and club promoter behind the nights out that Caylee was pictured at, testified that Caylee had seemed absolutely fine during the month. She never cried. She never said that Caylee was missing. She'd never been unhappy. The prosecution also played the court CCTV that showed at 7:45 p.m. on the day that she claimed Caylee had vanished. Caylee was with Tony in a Blockbuster, casually just choosing films.
And that's the night that she says she tried to go pick Caylee up and there was no one at the house.
Blockbuster does it again.
I'm so sad.
It's such a societal loss.
Yeah, I can't tell you why, Tony. And I won't tell you why until I'm eventually arrested for this fact. But I really feel like what I need to do is go to a Blockbusters with you, just to take my mind off some things that I can't talk about. It's fucking ridiculous. So you can understand with shit like this and how much Caylee lied that the prosecution think it's an open and shut case. But I really do get frustrated with them because I feel like, as good as Jose Baez is, I feel like the prosecution really dropped the ball.
Mm-hmm.
During this fateful month when Caylee was missing, Caylee also decided to get herself a tattoo on her shoulder that read Bella Vita. Just in case your Italian isn't totally brushed up, Bella Vita translates to beautiful life. She's such a fucking twat. So the prosecution actually managed to track down the tattoo artist who gave her this beautiful artwork. And this tattoo artist testified in court that while Caylee was getting the tattoo, remember, during the month that her child is missing, apparently all she talked about during that tattoo session was her boyfriend, Tony.
Yikes.
It's like, and I feel like this is quite obvious when you listen to Caylee speaking, it's like a 16-year-old. It's like she's not 22.
Yeah.
She's very arrested in her development, very, very immature. And prosecution also found an old friend of Caylee's, a woman named Kio Marie Cruz, who told the court that apparently Caylee had never wanted Caylee. She said that she'd wanted to give the baby up for adoption, but that Cindy had forbidden it and made Caylee keep the baby. And the prosecution also had a diary entry from Caylee's journal. This diary entry was dated the 21st of June, which would have been just 5 days after Caylee was last seen, and probably 5 days after Caylee was last alive. The diary entry read, quote, "I have no regrets, just a little worried. I just want for everything to work out okay. I completely trust my own judgment, and I know that I made the right decision. I just hope that the ends justify the means. This is the happiest I've been for a very long time. I just hope my happiness continues to grow." Pretty suspect, right?
Yep.
Problem is, the year wasn't noted. So that could have been the 21st of June any year, and she could be talking about literally anything. And Jose Baez obviously used that piece of information to tear through this evidence like a piece of wet toilet paper. My frustration, again, with the prosecution here is, you didn't just find scraps of paper. It was in a diary. Could you not tell from other things she's talking about? And they're probably like fucking Tony, what year it was from?
Yes, that's extremely true. I think that's one of those things you can't take without the context.
Yeah. So I feel like they're probably right that this wasn't 2008, because otherwise it would have been, we know if there's one thing that Casey Anthony talks about, it's Tony. And if it's no mention of Tony in this diary or on the pages next to this entry, then it's not 2008. So don't fucking bring it up in court because you're going to get torn apart. And it's going to look really bad.
Yeah, and she's only 22. Like, how many diaries can there really be? I went to school today and drew a picture of a horse. Okay, it's not that one. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Again, this is my frustration at the prosecution. I'm like, leave it out if you can't back it up, because Jose Baez is going to tear you apart and it's going to make the jury be like, oh.
So yeah, all of the evidence is pretty circumstantial, but circumstantial evidence is evidence. But unfortunately, for a first-degree murder charge, the prosecution needed a little bit more than that. Which brings us very neatly onto the forensic evidence. The prosecution's case was this. Caylee had died some sort of asphyxial-type death, probably involving drugs. So they're saying that Casey had administered the drugs, and then once Caylee was passed out, Casey had taped her daughter's mouth and nose shut with 3 pieces of duct tape, and then Caylee had died. And the drug that the prosecution settled on was chloroform. And this was because when expert in human decomposition Dr. Arpad Vas tested the gases from the carpet in the boot of the car, he found very high levels of chloroform. He actually said, and this is a quote, "It was shockingly high. The highest levels I've ever seen in my 20-year career."
But the defence hit back at the chloroform and said the chloroform is also present in many cleaning products and that it could simply have been there because of that. Also, the way in which Dr. Arpad Vas does his analysis hadn't been really used in court before, so it was very easy for Jose Baez to be like, where's the evidence for this? Like, where's the precedent for this? Like, we haven't seen this before. His favourite thing Baez to do is to undermine the scientific capabilities of every expert put in front of him. He also goes after Arpad Vas, who is not like some random guy they pulled off the street. He worked at like that body farm and stuff. Like, he's the real deal. But he's just like, what's your actual like field of expertise? And Dr. Arpad Vas was actually an anthropologist, but he had taught himself chemistry and come up with these experiments himself on how to do this. So Jose Baez just tears him apart. I'm not saying it's not true, but again, the prosecution kind of leave themselves open to this. And also the other thing was that toxicology on Caylee's bones also showed no signs of chloroform, which the prosecution obviously made a big deal about. However, chloroform in the body disappears after just a day or two. And so finding chloroform in soft tissue after a few days would have been hard enough, let alone finding it in dry bones after 6 months. But the problem is, this point was never made clear to the jury. Baez just says it, and then it really frustrates me because in all the documentaries, they're like, we never got a chance to rebut that. And I'm like, what do you mean you never got a chance to rebut that? I don't understand.
I don't think I know enough about how the American justice system works to like make that call, but can't they cross-examine? Like, surely.
I don't know. But this is the thing you need to know, is that Baez makes these claims that, yeah, all right, you found chloroform. Chloroform's in cleaning products. You already said that somebody had tried to clean out the boot, and you didn't find any in her bones. Can't find it in the bones, but nobody hears that bit. The jury don't hear that bit. And I don't know, perhaps the state thought that their other finding would be proof enough of their chloroform theory, because Google searches had been found on the Anthony's household computer on chloroform. And apparently, someone had searched for chloroform online a whopping 84 times on that computer.
And not just chloroform, how to make it.
This is the thing. Some places it says how to make it, some places it says chloroform. It's something like that. But the word chloroform is searched for, and they're also saying it was done 84 times.
But once again, Cindy Anthony, enabling mum of the year, swings in to save the day. Cindy took the stand and stated that she had been the one to search for chloroform. Apparently, the Anthony's dog had been eating some bamboo leaves in the back garden and getting a little bit sick. So Cindy had Googled chlorophyll, and Google had showed her suggestions that included chloroform. And out of pure curiosity, the nurse clicked on it. Cindy was adamant, though, she'd only searched for chloroform the once.
In an aha moment, the prosecution questioned Cindy on how she could have been the one at home Googling chloroform when her logins and time cards at work showed that she had been there at the time and not at home. Cindy said she didn't know, but it was definitely her at home.
You can't answer that one, officer. But it was just so you know. Yeah. The important thing is, it was definitely me.
It was definitely me.
Even though literally all of the hard evidence points to the contrary, I can promise you, me, the trustworthy Cindy Anthony, can say that I definitely was at home and not at work.
Precisely. But then it was the defence's turn for an aha moment. Because apparently, the software that the prosecution had used to check the number of times that chloroform had been searched had had a glitch. And instead of 84 times, as the state had said, chloroform had actually only been searched for once from the Anthony computer. And some people say, oh, look, that's consistent with what Cindy said. Because Cindy stuck to her guns on the stand. She said, I only did it once. I did not search 84 times. I was searching for chlorophyll, saw chloroform, clicked on it one time. And people make a big deal about that. But I'm not saying it wasn't Cindy. But obviously Jose Baez had the information that there was a glitch with the software and it had only been searched for once.
Yeah.
And obviously he would have told Cindy, you go up there, you tell them it was you, and say it was only searched for once. And then I'll come out and say, and we know it was only searched for once. She goes out there and said, yeah, I searched for chloroform 84 times by accident. Then he can't use this evidence about the glitch.
Yeah.
He obviously would have fucking told her. In any case, all of this really, really hurt the prosecution.
Byers also just dismissed the hairs that had been found in the boot, saying that the kind of DNA the state had, so mitochondrial only, couldn't even definitively prove whose hair it was. And then he just sort of shrugged off the banding that we discussed in last week's episode. This again undermined the state's way of showing that Caylee's dead body had been in the back of Casey's car at one point. Byers really, really goes after Dr. G, even going so far as to claim that her methods were unscientific. Said the lawyer to the scientific doctor. In court footage, the judge even looks a bit confused, but everyone just sort of lets it happen.
This is the thing, when he's making these accusations at Dr. G and at Dr. Arpad Vass, you can see the judge in the background being like, what? Like, he looks like, state, are you gonna, do something about it? Like, it's just shocking. It's shocking. And then the defense, Jose Byers, brings out the big guns. He brings out Dr. Werner Spitz. And that name probably sounds familiar to many of you true crime fans out there, because Dr. Spitz was and is a highly recognizable and respected medical examiner, having been involved in cases like the O.J. Simpson trial and the JFK assassination.
It doesn't get much bigger than that.
Not really, and it doesn't get much bigger than Dr. Werner Spitz in this world.
No, unless it's Nuremberg.
Yeah.
There isn't any bigger criminal arena he could be in.
No. And Spitz actually did a second autopsy on Caylee's remains, and he refuted Dr. G's duct tape theory, which was, after all, the main element that the prosecution could point to say that the death was a homicide.
Mm-hmm.
Without the duct tape, there's no way of proving it was murder. Obviously, apart from the fact that the body was fucking hidden inside 3 bags in the fucking swamp woods.
Mm-hmm.
Spitz pointed out that his reasoning for saying that the duct tape wasn't valid evidence was that there was no DNA on the duct tape to prove that it had ever been over Caylee's mouth. Remember, Dr. G was saying that it had been over Caylee's mouth because of the mandible and the lower teeth still being there. He said, like many other people, that it could have just been in the swamp and got stuck to the skull when it had been tossed about by animals. The prosecution hit back that the tape had been in 90-degree heat. That's Fahrenheit. In Celsius, that's 32 degrees.
It's hot.
It's hot.
And it's humid as shit.
Oh, yeah. It's in a fucking swamp. And, the body had been submerged underwater for various points because, the water level had dropped and risen in that area so many times during the 6 months it had laid there. So, yeah, they say obviously there'll be no DNA left to find. It was out exposed for so long. But remember, and this is the key thing that Byers just loves to fucking say, the defense don't have to prove anything. They just have to poke enough holes in the prosecution's story to introduce beyond reasonable doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he does very well. He proves nothing. He's just there with a stick.
Just poking.
Poking.
And speaking of sticks, Byers also brought up the main man, my favourite, who had found Caylee's remains, the glamorous Roy Kronk. Roy, when he had found the remains, had made a huge mistake.
Yeah. Learn from Roy. Don't be Roy. What we're about to tell you next. If you are in this situation, don't do it. Don't do this.
Because Kronkers had picked up a stick and put it in the skull's eye hole and lifted it up. So that means he's contaminated the crime scene, and Byers made the case that because of this, all of the forensic evidence that the prosecution had presented was completely out the window, which I think, when you consider how long the body has been exposed, I really don't think you can put that on Kronk's shoulders.
No.
His broad shoulders.
But he does testify in court, and he says, I knew it was a skull. He knew it was a skull. He wasn't like, it's a rock and let me poke it. He was like, I knew it was a skull and I shouldn't have picked it up. My bad.
Kronk.
Don't do that. If you find a fucking skull in the woods, don't do it. Call the police. Go do that instead. Because this case could be made. You could be made to say, you contaminated, you did whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's fair or right. And this didn't actually happen. The forensic evidence wasn't thrown out. But Byers, again, was able to just poke another little hole and say, how secure is what we're even looking at? That duct tape, maybe it was stuck to fucking Roy Kronk's boot, and he stomped in there and got it stuck to the face. You just don't know.
So let's leave the forensics in Kronk's completely incapable hands and move on to the easily provable lies that Casey had told police throughout the process. And these were, of course, the front and centre of the prosecution's case against her, and so much of it was so incredibly damning. And even though Byers brought in dozens of Casey's friends, who all said that Casey was a great mum, They all had to admit that Casey had seemed fine during the month that Caylee was missing, and she hadn't told a single one of them that she had been taken.
So Jose Baez had to find a way to explain all of the lies and odd behaviour that had come from his client. Like, why did she not tell anyone as soon as Caylee disappeared? Why did she lie about everything from working at Universal Studios to all of the made-up people? Why did she not call the police for 31 days after Caylee supposedly vanished? And to counter the sheer weirdness of it all, Baez was going to have to go hard and create an equally shocking reason to counter Casey's actions. And yeah, fucking hell did he drop an atomic bomb on proceedings.
Here's what he did. Baez told the court that Caylee had never even been missing, but that she had in fact died on the 16th of June, 2008, in the family home. According to this new statement, the 3-year-old Caylee had got into the garden, and someone had left the stairs down to the above-ground pool. Caylee, who loved to swim, got into the pool, and tragically, she drowned. Apparently, when Casey had woken up, she found Caylee missing, and she and George searched everywhere. Eventually, it had been George who found Caylee's lifeless body in the water. George screamed at Casey that she was going to go to jail for the rest of her life and that Cindy would never forgive her. Baez continued that Casey begged her father for help, and finally he agreed to help her and hide the body, for Cindy's sake. So George took Caylee's body, wrapped it up, and told Casey he'd handle it. Then apparently, former police officer George Anthony took his beloved granddaughter's body and dumped it in the woods a 1/4 mile from his own front door, wrapped up in very recognisable things from his own house.
Yep.
George. Leave George out of it.
Oh, it gets so much
I know, I've read it.
So, the pool theory was Baez's way to explain what had happened to Caylee. Since the Zanny the Nanny stuff was so obviously a non-starter, and they had found Caylee's body a 1/4 mile from the house, he had to find some way to explain what had happened to Caylee. And since no physical evidence was present to explain a real cause of death, because remember there's no soft tissue, no trauma to the bones, drowning could have been plausible. Baez, however, when he offers up this theory in court, offers not one shred of evidence for the drowning story. In fact, he finds a weird way, and I haven't put this in the notes because my brain was melting, but I'll tell you about it. It's talked about quite at length in one of the documentaries. He finds a way to blame Dr. G for the fact that he has no evidence for the fact that Caylee Anthony drowned.
Is this like a Piers Morgan, Meghan Markle situation where maybe Dr. G just once didn't text Baez back and now his entire career is based around bringing her down and just talking smack?
Oh, mate. Baez is, like I said, he wasn't really well known when this case happened, but he got to be Casey Anthony's defense lawyer. If I can get her off, I'm it. I am it forever. I will hire him. This was his case to make his career. The way he blamed Dr. G for the fact that he didn't have any evidence of the drowning was he said that a way that you could tell about drowning is checking for diatoms in the body of a victim. Diatoms are like single-cell algae that live in water, but they also live like elsewhere, just like in fucking mud and shit. And he said that if you had tested her body for diatoms, we could have told whether she had drowned. This is absolutely fucking nonsensical. You test for diatoms in the liver or in the bone marrow. They just got bone. They just got dry bone. And also, diatoms can come from anywhere, like I said. And also, for you to test for diatoms, you would also need a sample of the water to test against that.
Right.
By this point, it's been 2.5 years, because the trial takes place 2 years later. But it had been 6 months since after Caylee had died when her bones were found. So where are you getting the sample of pool water that's not been refreshed for almost 3 years? And even if they had found the diatoms, even if you'd found liver and tested it against a sample and found a match, we already know she fucking swam in that pool anyway. She could have swallowed it. And that's how it could have got into her body. Again, I feel like the jury are not told this part. They're just told, well, we could have had it, but we don't because you didn't test for diatoms. She drowned. I rest my case. It's remarkable.
Wow.
So yeah, he offers no shred of evidence for this drowning story, but obviously this plotline hit everyone in court like a ton of bricks. It was completely unbelievable. And I honestly think that it was all the more shocking because Baez was the one saying it all. And in the court footage, of which there are hours and hours and hours and hours on YouTube that you can watch, Casey just sits there, staring silently She does this thing where her eyes are constantly darting. It's like she's like, between this person. She's like watching Byers and she's like, how are they taking it? How is this coming across? She's a mega blank face as well. She has like the blankest expression in court the entire time.
Blank face, son of blank face.
Absolutely, completely blank face. Rarely shows any emotion in court. Again, I know that's not particularly indicative of something, but you have to look at this case like with everything together. The worst part, there's so many bad parts. One of the worst parts is when Jeff Hopkins, everybody remember him from last week's episode, he comes to court and he's like, I don't know her. We didn't even work together. Yeah. And I said, I don't know who Zenaida Gonzalez is. I don't have a nanny. I don't even have any children. And Casey Anthony's just sat there with a blank face. I would have died of embarrassment.
Oh my God.
She just sits there. She's like,
She doesn't have the embarrassment gene, I don't think.
Zero.
So the state took hold of this drowning story and pushed back on it. Dr. G took the stand and said that in her 20 years of experience with dealing in accidental deaths, parents and families just don't act like the Anthonys. She said, quote, no matter how stiff the body, they always call 911 when it's an accident because there is still, in their minds, a chance. Of the 120 cases I've seen in the last few years, even when a mum's on crack cocaine, she calls 911.
And that makes sense. If it's an accident, I feel like you would think, there is a way. There is a way.
But if the jury was surprised by this new revelation from the defense, it was about to get even more crazy because Byers now needed to explain away all of Casey's lies. And this was the reason he came up with.
We are what we are because of who brought us into this world and how we were raised. Casey was raised to lie. This child, who at 8 years old, learned to lie immediately. She could be 13 years old, have her father's penis in her mouth, and then go to school and play with the other kids as if nothing ever happened. Nothing's wrong. That will help you understand why no one knew that her child was dead. That's the most important thing you must keep in the back of your mind, is that sex abuse does things to us. It changes you. Some people are fortunate to live with it. Others are not. And in this sad tragedy, it had to happen to Casey.
So,
yeah.
Jesus Christ doesn't quite cover it.
Yeah. It's so graphic.
Yeah. I mean, it's beyond graphic, and it's even worse because it's George. And Byers is not a man of half measures. He goes the full hog. It's like he picks a story that is so out there, it's too crazy not to be true. And Byers, the smarmy git that he is, unfortunately, is just one step ahead. He is just better than the prosecution.
Yeah, I mean, if you break down the way in which Byers tackles this case, it's really smart. He picks apart every single thing. How do I explain the fact that she didn't tell anybody? Mm-hmm. Okay, it's because she drowned in the pool and it was like a family secret, they covered it up. And how do I explain the lying? Because of the sexual abuse, she's scared of her dad. Like, it all ties together. Mm-hmm. He paints a much better picture and tells a much better narrative, even for something that makes absolutely no fucking sense, than the prosecution did. And that's the way in which, again, I don't want to be like, oh, yay, go Byers, but I'm like, he did it very well.
Yeah.
So the entire time, Byers is talking about the abuse, incredibly graphically, like we said. Casey sat there crying. And George, oh my God, please, I'll leave links again. You go watch the court footage. George is sat in the courtroom with absolutely no expression on his face at all. Now he's blank face George. And apparently, Byers had told George and Cindy just that morning that he was going to throw George under the bus in court. Apparently, Byers told him, this is according to George, you're going to have to fall on your sword for this. But George didn't play along. Or if it was true, if the sexual abuse was true, I don't personally think it is. Because there is, once again, no evidence whatsoever or any history of this or any accusations. And Cindy and George to this day are still together. And in interviews, they sit there holding hands. And I'm not saying mums don't enable abusive fathers or anything like that, but it's just none of it makes any fucking sense. So yeah, George doesn't play along with it, or if it's true, he doesn't admit it. When he took the stand for the prosecution, he was asked, have you ever sexually molested your daughter, Casey Anthony? And again, he's asked this by the prosecution. He replies, "No, sir, I'd never do anything like that." When he was asked, "Were you present in the home when Caylee Anthony died?" he replied, "No. And when I heard that today, it hurt really bad." And the whole time, Casey just sits there as her dad is humiliated and mauled in court. It's unbelievable. And I know that's the prosecution, they're not trying to maul him, but it's emotionally mauling. And like I said, I don't believe the abuse story for a second. Byers and Casey would have, and did, say anything they had to.
When the defence questioned George, everyone was expecting them to hit him with the abuse claims and tear apart his denial, but Byers didn't even bring it up. Why? Because he had no evidence whatsoever. He just brought it up once to plant the idea in the jurors' minds. And then he never mentions it again because he knows a seed is enough.
He knows not to keep digging because then it's going to get pulled apart. And if people keep seeing George deny it, they might believe him. So don't bring it up again. Just leave it.
So when Byers had his turn with George at the stand, he took another, arguably even more malicious route. He brought up George's suicide attempt from January 2009. After Caylee's body had been discovered, George found himself unable to cope. And one day he drove to a hotel in Daytona Beach, took 70 pills, and drank as much beer as he physically could. He even left a note to his family that read, "I miss Caylee. I want to be with her. I love you, Cindy. But Caylee, here I come." George was found and he was resuscitated, and he says in interviews that he just couldn't go on because when they found Caylee, she'd been so close to home the entire time that he did blame himself. Every jail visit, Cindy tells Casey, "Your dad's been out all night looking for Caylee. He didn't know where she was."
Yeah, because in all those jail visits, we hear Cindy and George coming in looking exhausted. And Cindy always says to Casey, "Your dad's been out all night, all day looking for him." And that's why George can't live with himself, because Caylee was found so close to home and he was looking everywhere. Just don't believe for a second he knew she was there.
No, oh my God, no.
No. So when Byers brings up the incident of George's attempted suicide, he listens to George say that it was because he was sad. But Byers says to the jury it wasn't because he was sad. It was because of the guilt. Again, that's all you need. That's all you need to just... Apparently, that's all you need.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when you're a piece of shit fucking murder defense lawyer like Byers is, you'll just go... I mean, he's done a clearly very good job, but he's got no shame.
No, that's why him and Casey are like the perfect match. So when Byers accuses George of having done it and having tried to kill himself because of the guilt, George breaks down on the stand. And it's honestly, I found it one of the most stomach-churning parts of this case to watch. And speaking of stomach-churning to watch, it's Cindy in the interviews after. Like I said, they're still together. When the interviewers in one of the documentaries I watched asked Cindy about this incident, about Byers bringing up George's suicide attempt, she just says it must have been one of the hardest things for him to go through. I feel like you've got to watch it in the context to understand how callous it sounds, because she makes it sound like an inevitability. She makes it sound like, well, that's just what he had to do. You know, I had to say the shit about the fucking chloroform. Like, it's just what he had to do. It's kind of the subtext I took away from it. Not instead being angry at the fact that Byers did it, or the fact that Casey obviously went along with it, because, yeah, she's not the one saying it, but she's there.
Yeah.
I just feel so, so sorry for George. And throughout the trial, Casey never takes a stand. She never ever testifies, which I think, again, is another very smart move from Byers, because I think Casey had taken the stand, opened her mouth, the jury would have fucking hated her. And finally, after a painful trial, it was time for the closing arguments.
Judge Belvin Perry actually forbade the allegations of sexual abuse from being mentioned in the closing arguments, as the defence had shown absolutely no evidence for it. On that grounds, I have no idea why it wasn't struck from the record, but it wasn't. But even if it had been struck from the record, the jury still heard it. Byers didn't even bring up the pool drowning theory in his closing remarks either, because again, he didn't have any evidence. And he actually says, we might never know how Caylee died. After you literally proposed a theory of how she died, saying this is what happened.
Not even a theory. He says, Casey has admitted this is what happened. Casey has admitted to me that Caylee drowned in the pool. It wasn't a theory. He was saying that is what categorically happened.
Yeah.
And then in his closing arguments, he says, we might never know what happened.
Honestly, this is filling me with joy for my jury duty that starts on Monday.
Oh yeah, shit. That's it. We're actually trying to take 2 weeks off after this. Hannah's got to resurface.
Yeah.
hopefully only 2 weeks.
Do you know what the real shitter? They've moved it from the Old Bailey.
Oh, no.
I think it's still an Old Bailey. So apparently they're called Nightingale Courts, where so it's still in the city, it's still in the south, it's on like East Cheap or something. So it's a lower court, but it's an Old Bailey case because it's a COVID thing. They can't have too many people in the building. So I think it's still an Old Bailey case, but it's fucking a bit of a shitter. I can't even go in the Old Bailey.
Oh, that is a bit of a shitter. And also, this just makes me sound like the work misogynist that I am, that I'm like, oh, East Cheap's actually really close to here, so if we need to come into work after, it's really easy. Yeah, because we're not actually off.
No. So many moving cogs. So many levers being pulled by Crocs. So, Baez doesn't directly say the pool theory in his closing statements, but he does hint at it by showing a picture of Caylee opening the French doors at the back of the Anthony house, all on her own. And within this shot, you can see the pool in the background, just suggesting a way, just reminding.
He's basically saying, look, proof she can open the door on her own and go out into the pool.
Like subliminal advertising. Mm-hmm. Baez then told the jury to base their verdict on evidence, not on emotion, even though he has literally provided none. And he said all the state was doing was trying to slut-shame Casey. But they had no evidence for what had happened, even though they presented loads of evidence.
Yeah. And this is the thing. In interviews with Baez, like, he goes on the Dr. Phil show, obviously. Sorry, the Phil McGraw show. Shade. And he, like, after he stops representing Casey and talks about the case, the thing that really infuriates me, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe you can correct me, the thing that irritates me is he constantly keeps saying, when Phil is like, you talked about, because Phil is very much like, he thinks George didn't sexually abuse Casey Anthony, like most people in the world are. And when he said, you know, you were saying that George had sexually abused Casey as a child, where was your evidence? Where was your evidence? Where was your evidence for this? And you said that Lee had sexually abused her. Where's the evidence? Baez keeps saying, as the defense, I don't have to prove anything. I just have to create beyond reasonable doubt. But my understanding is that's what you have to do with the overall charges of the case. Not that you can just say whatever fucking crazy shit you want with no evidence.
Yeah, it seems pretty unreasonable that the defense can just stand up and chat shit for days on end and no one can pull them up on it.
Because you don't have to prove anything. I feel like that's not what that means.
No, I also think that that's not what that means. I'm sure him and Phil McGraw get on really well.
Yeah.
Both fucking snake oil merchants.
I really feel like all that means is when the defense don't have to prove anything is like they don't have to prove that Casey Anthony didn't kill Casey. Mm-hmm. They just have to create beyond reasonable doubt as to the prosecution's case. But you can't just say whatever shit you fucking want, like her dad sexually abused her, offer no evidence, and then say, well, I'm the defense, I don't have to prove anything. Like, what? Anyway, I thought that was like quite an interesting part of his defense about himself. So the state closed by saying that Casey had killed Caylee because she'd wanted a new life, one with her 22-year-old club promoter boyfriend, Tony Lazzaro. They said that she wanted to have a life and be out there and be free, but she knew she'd either have to sacrifice herself or her child. And I think it's safe to say that after the trial, after the closing arguments, even despite Baez's performance, I think most people were expecting a guilty verdict. But when the jury returned, they unanimously found 25-year-old Casey Anthony not guilty of first-degree murder, of aggravated child abuse, or aggravated manslaughter. And honestly, from Casey herself to the judge, everyone in that courtroom looks shocked. The reporters look like they can't fucking believe it. It's unbelievable. After this, Casey was only convicted of providing law enforcement with false information, for which she was sentenced to a year in prison. But she was let off with time served and good behaviour, given she had spent about 3 years at this point in a county jail. And so she walked out of jail just 10 days after sentencing.
Everyone in the whole world was making that noise. People were furious. And they were as angry at the jurors as they were at Casey herself. There were protesters outside the courthouse with signs that read, Jurors 1 to 12 guilty of murder. I don't want to go on Monday.
I mean, guys, like, fucking... I understand people's anger, but I'm like, again, you can't just start saying whatever you fucking want.
No.
You're not Jose Baez.
Jurors even got death threats. One guy said he got 1,000 emails a day from people raging at him. The members of the jury have said in interviews that most of them actually believe that she did do it, but they felt that the state just didn't have the evidence to back up how, when, and where Caylee had died. But there are a few things that didn't come out at trial that we think are worth discussing.
Again, prosecution, if they had done their job better, instead of, I don't think they did a bad job in court. I do think that they were complacent in their case building. So firstly, fact that didn't come out, or not fact, thing that didn't come out at court, at trial. The drowning story. Well, when that came out, it sounded awfully familiar to another young woman out there named April Whalen. April had been Casey's jailhouse neighbour, and in 2007, her 15-year-old son, Isaiah, had tragically drowned in their family pool. And April's father had been the one to find him. And April's like, I'm pretty definitely sure I told Casey Anthony about that when we basically lived together. Not enough? Okay, I've got more. On the 16th of June 2008, the day that Caylee vanished, Casey had been on the Anthony's computer, scrolling through Facebook for hours. She had looked through hundreds of pictures of her friends partying, and we know it was her because she also MSN chatted with her friends.
Oh, those were the days.
Then
she had Googled shot girl costumes. A few hours later, there was a more ominous search for suffocation, shortly followed by foolproof suffocation. And then Casey Anthony clicked on an article about suicide that had discussed taking poison and putting a bag over one's head. All these searches and internet activity were on a Firefox browser. Cindy and George are old, so they obviously always used Internet Explorer. So guess who used the younger, hipper, better version?
I'm guessing it wasn't Caylee.
No, it was not. It was Casey. So when police analysts collected information from the family computer, they only vaguely looked for anything connected to chloroform on Internet Explorer. And they did that because they were so sure about what they had found in the car. They didn't think they would need anything else. And what's more, the state didn't ask for it either. But Baez knew about these searches. In fact, in an interview after he stopped representing Casey, he said that he thought the state were going to hit him hard with these in court, but they didn't, because they totally overlooked Firefox.
This is the thing. Baez fucking knew that she had done these searches, and the prosecution didn't. Yep. All right, time to get the pins out of the pincushion, because it's time to talk about Zenaida Gonzalez.
Okay.
So remember we told you last week to put a pin in that name, and we also told you to put a pin in the location of where Caylee's body had been found, in the swamp woods. Well, now it's time to remove those pins. Remember that we said Caylee's body had been found about 1/4 of a mile from the Anthony's home. It was found in a wooded clearing between two houses. One house was number 4701, sure, and 4709. Guess who lived in these two houses? The person who lived at 4701 was Zenaida Alaya, and the person who lived at 4709 on the other side of this gap was Peter Gonzalez.
It's like, I can't remember, there's a magician who has a trick for remembering a pack of cards. And he's like, you visualize a walk that you do often, and you put the card in your mind on the gate of the house that you pass first. And that's a memory technique. So it's the same walk, and then you just change the things that you like put on the hook. It's like she's done that.
Yeah. Just by pure instinct, though.
Yeah. No, I don't think she's been doing brain training. No. I think she's just pulled this one out of her ass.
But it's I don't know if it's got anything to do with it. But come on. I know it's Florida. But
yes, it is Florida, but it is one fuck of a coincidence, even for the Sunshine State, my friend.
Jesus. Okay, so none of this matters. Despite how hot and heavy we're getting about it, it doesn't matter. Also, this is all very well known. I didn't dig this out as some super sleuthing. This is all very well known. There's 1 million fucking AP articles about it. I'll leave links below. But none of this matters, in a legal sense at least. Because thanks to Double Jeopardy, Casey Anthony cannot be retried for the murder of Caylee Anthony. She's free. And I do have to wonder, if they hadn't gone for first degree, but then she doesn't even get convicted of aggravated child murder.
I think
aggravated child, whatever it was, manslaughter. I don't know. Even the judge afterwards is shocked.
I'm amazed that they didn't overturn the jury's verdict, because they can do that.
I don't know why the judge didn't, because he has gone on record and said that he thought that the state showed enough evidence for a conviction of one of the homicides, if not first degree for one of the homicides. I don't know why he didn't overturn it. I guess that goes some way to, like, maybe you don't want to do that all the time because, like, it undermines, and maybe with a high-profile case like this, maybe it undermines confidence in the jury system, but it's not just us saying it. And it's not just you. It's a fucking high-profile, like, everybody knows this case,
The whole thing seems completely unbelievable. And the defense were probably not as thorough as they should have been, but even still, there's no way you can watch the footage of Caylee Anthony being interviewed and not think she's completely guilty. We will talk theories at the end, but we have a little bit to get through before we get to that stage. So let's talk about Caylee's personality and what might have been going on with her mental health. Like we said, if you watch her being interviewed, she spends most of her time laughing and joking with the police officers. She's never furious, like you might expect a parent who is innocent to be. I'd imagine I'd be pretty seething at the police for wasting my time talking to me rather than looking for my missing child and her abductor after 30 days. But Caylee is very chill. She shows no emotion. She even presents very open body language. It's very believable. If you don't know the context, you'd be forgiven for thinking that she was being honest. But once you actually listen to what she's saying, you realise it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
So for a better understanding of, what maybe personality disorder is going on with Caylee or whatever it might be, we went to Dr. Grande on YouTube. I will leave a link to his video analysis below. And he makes the point that it's almost counterproductive for Caylee to be so together. And Jim Can't Swim also says something very similar. Again, we'll leave a link below. If you were in this situation, you would expect somebody to actually be pretending to be upset, pretending to be frantic.
Yeah.
Why does she pretend, or why is she appearing like everything is fine? It's like it's a facade that she can't take off. It's like she can't stop pretending that everything is okay all of the time. It's like she can't change her behavior. And of course, a question becomes, what's going on with her then? Because whether you believe she did it or not, she never seems bothered by the disappearance of her child. Even if you think she didn't kill Caylee, why isn't she fucking terrified then?
Why isn't she terrified of being labelled a literal child murderer and then going to prison? Being a cop isn't fun in prison, but being a child murderer in a women's prison is horrendous. It's the worst of the worst.
I bet. So whether you think she did it or not, her behaviour doesn't match up to the circumstances that she's in, because she's got a missing and then a dead child.
Yeah.
So is she a psychopath? Is she a sociopath? What's going on? Interestingly. And again, we don't often kind of get this level of information. It's once again thanks to Florida sunshine laws that we have all of this information. 2 mental health professionals assessed Caylee using what's known as the MMPI, which is the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. If you've read the book, you will read about us talking about Carla Homolka's MMPI in there. Basically, it is the gold standard for personality assessment. Both of these mental health practitioners who assessed Caylee using this assessment tool found that she had normal results, which means that there was no evidence of any sort of mental or personality disorders. Which makes me want to scream, how?
In a way, that's more terrifying.
Yeah, I'm baffled. I'm absolutely baffled by this case. I will say MMPI is the gold standard, but as we saw with Carla Homolka in the book, it can churn out incorrect results if it's not done properly. These assessments were looked into by other experts, and it was said that it was done properly. So, I can't refute it.
I'm at a loss.
Yeah. So basically, these 2 mental health professionals found that Caylee Anthony had no psychopathy, she had no sociopathy, and that she only had a normal level of narcissism for her age, which at 25 would have been 22 at the time, but, they're assessing a person in their mid-20s. They're like, it's pretty normal, the level of narcissism she has. They also pointed out that Caylee Anthony had nothing in her history which indicated that she would be likely to commit a violent crime like this, which again, as we know, is a pretty strong indicator.
So where is Caylee Anthony now? Well, after the trial, she moved in with one of her attorneys. And now it seems that she lives in Palm Beach with a guy called Patrick McKenna. He was the 73-year-old lead investigator for her defense. We actually talked about this in the news a few months ago. Apparently, Patrick McKenna is helping Caylee with her photography business and becoming a PI. I'm sure that's all he's helping her with.
Yep. I'm sure she's not helping him out at all.
No, I'm sure she's not trading any favours for anything.
With his dick. I mean, it's despicable. When she gets interviewed about becoming a PI stuff, she's like, I'm just going to do what they did to me, but in a good way.
Show me the person who would hire Casey Anthony. Because what do PIs do? They find people and they watch people.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's the two things Casey
She can't do.
do.
In her first ever interview as a free woman, which she gave in 2017, this is what Casey had to say for herself.
I don't give a about what anybody thinks about me. I don't care about that. Yeah. I never will. I'm okay with myself. I sleep pretty good at night.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting. And there's a documentary where after she gives this interview, they play it to George and Cindy, where she's saying, I sleep okay at night. And George just looks heartbroken. He's like, we haven't slept in years.
And also, she compares her case for murdering her child. She compares it to the case of O.J. Simpson, even going so far as to say that she sees many parallels between the two cases. Which, Casey, maybe pick a case where the popular opinion of the globe isn't that they did it. Yeah. And their autobiography is called If I Did It. Like, try harder. Even Amanda Knox would be better than that.
Yeah. I don't know what she's thinking.
There's no way there's not something incredibly wrong with her. I'm sorry.
I know. I don't know what it is, though, because the MMPI were like, no, she's fine.
Maybe she's got some new fucking hybrid personality disorder that no one else has. She's got the Dennis Nilsons, is what she's got.
She's got a touch of the Dennis Nilsons. So as for the Anthonys, what's going on with them? Well, George says now, thankfully, that he wants nothing to do with Casey anymore. He says he's done. Lee also has nothing to do with Casey. He has his own child and he's like, I don't want her anywhere near us. But Cindy seems a little bit weaker on it. In these interviews, I've watched so many, it's all just like blurred into one. And they're all from like quite a similar time period, like recent, like as in 2015 to 2017, 2018. Sometimes in the same breath, she'll say that she thinks Casey did it. And then she'll pause and be like, oh, I don't know. And I'm just like, ugh.
So as we reach the end of 2021, dragging ourselves into the new year,
Kicking and screaming.
At least we can look forward to it not being fucking nighttime at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Anyway, what do we think? Your loyal hosts. What have we decided? Well, probably we think that Casey gave Caylee something like Xanax, which we know Casey had access to, and she probably used it to knock the little girl out for long stretches of time so she could do what she wanted.
And there is some corroboration for this. Again, it's not solid. We can't test Caylee's toxicology, can't test anything to see. But people like Tony and his housemate and other people that were friends with her did say that Caylee would just sleep for a really long time sometimes and wake up and still look really tired. She was fucking... I know sometimes we call her 2 and sometimes we call her 3. It's like she's like 2 3/4. You're just giving a child that young fucking Xanax. Again, it just speaks to the immaturity and irresponsibility of Casey Anthony.
So, was this an accidental killing or was it a calculated murder? The duct tape seems to suggest that it was premeditated. Once Caylee was dead, Casey moved her body into the boot of her car. And then, we think, and this is just our opinion, so don't be afraid of a differing opinion, it won't bite you. We think that Casey then put Caylee in the car and just tried to forget about it for a bit because she's incredibly immature. That was how she would have dealt with it. Then, when Casey couldn't ignore the smell anymore, that's when she dumped Caylee's body in the woods. And then she ditched the car after trying to clean the boot out and filling it with rubbish to try to mask the smell of her decomposing daughter.
And I think that, how could she do all of this? Well, I think there's one thing that we have learned about Casey Anthony. She's very, very good at compartmentalizing and rationalizing her way out of situations. From her past, things like with the graduation, her pregnancy, the lies that she told police, like walking them around Universal Studios, we know that she's the kind of person to just ignore things as long as she humanly, possibly, physically can. And then she is like, oh, okay, fine. The whole crime is so immature as well. It really reflects Casey's personality and behaviour, I think. And that is also the fact that Caylee's body is dumped a quarter of a mile from her own fucking front door is what makes me think no one else was involved in this. And also, just going back to the calls that we listened to at the start, the jail visits where the parents are like, you don't need to protect anybody. You don't need to protect me. You don't need to protect your dad. You don't need to protect... Just tell the truth. Why would the parents say that if Caylee had drowned in the fucking pool and they'd all covered it up? And you think Casey's the kind of person that'll be protecting her dad in prison after what she watched happen to him in court? I don't know. Did she do it on purpose? Did she not? I don't know. I think the duct tape, if we believe that the duct tape was on the face, then I think it was on purpose. Because why is there duct tape on a child's face?
Yeah.
If we believe Werner Spitz and the idea that there's no proof or that the duct tape wasn't attached to the face and the mandible and the teeth isn't good enough evidence and it just maybe was part of the rubbish of the scene, then I could believe that it was an accident.
Yeah.
And that Casey basically kills Caylee and then just tries to get on with it. I think a problem for the prosecution in court, a reason that they didn't win, they blame the jury, not in the sense of like, oh, this jury was stupid. They blame the jury for being like, well, we could only pick the people who didn't confess to the fact when they were being vetted for the jury that they had already made up their minds. So because of Florida sunshine laws, they had already seen all the evidence that was there. So if they still weren't convinced of her guilt, there was nothing we could say to convince them. But as a cop-out, man.
Yeah, it is your job.
And also most people out there thought she was fucking guilty
Yeah,
as fuck.
right. Yeah, you had a pretty easy run of it, actually.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think that's good enough, really. I don't know. I think the problem for the prosecution was that they repeatedly tried to say, and this is interesting because the prosecution don't have to prove a motive. They don't have to prove a motive. But I feel like they repeatedly tried to say that Casey had wanted to be free and that the reason she killed Caylee was that reason. I think they didn't paint a good enough picture of the situation, like Baez did. And I think the problem with them trying to point to this as the motive was that Baez and the defense were quite easily able, pointing at Cindy and George, her loyal parents who were in court every day, to say that motherhood wasn't really that hard for Casey. She had a place to live. She had parents to look after her. They had parents that would even have taken Caylee away from her and happily raised her as their own, which I think is true.
Yes, I agree.
So then it became hard, I think, for people to believe that Casey's only way out of this situation where she was trapped with a child was to kill this child. And I think that was maybe the downfall. I don't know. I think there's also something interesting to be said in why then if we say that she did it on purpose, if we say it wasn't an accident, she did it on purpose, why then did Casey Anthony kill Caylee? Because like I said, Cindy would have taken that child. Part of me does wonder, given the relationship between that mother and daughter, whether Casey Anthony didn't do it in some way to punish Cindy and to decouple herself from her mum. You have a baby with somebody, and no, it's not Cindy's baby, you're tied to that person forever.
Oh, yeah.
And the way in which Cindy overreaches her responsibility as a grandmother, I'm not blaming her, I just think Casey clearly was very irresponsible. I think it was a way for Casey to punish her and also to find a way to try and cut that tie a bit. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I also think she's, immature enough to have seen it in that light and been like, I've got a problem, how do I get rid of it?
I'll never be free as long as Caylee is here because you'll always be on my back.
Yeah.
But that is assuming she did it on purpose. I don't know. But whatever happened, the way in which she deals with it after is absolutely fucking bonkers.
Do you think? Here's my theory about
me.
Zanny the nanny.
Oh.
So Xanax is referred to by the kids on the street as Zanny. So could it be that Casey would make a little joke about it? Because she didn't have a real in-life person nanny, but she did have a pharmaceutical nanny.
Oh, absolutely.
So she probably called it Zanny the nanny.
She's gone off to Zanny. Yeah. I do think that is a very, very likely possibility.
Yes, I agree.
That is also... Again, this is one of those cases where I feel like, how much do we have to add to it? A lot of this is out there already. It's a case that is very old. It's very well covered. But is one that you guys have requested. And I'll be honest, is enjoyed the right word? I found it very interesting to dig into.
And you probably feel like you've liberated yourself from the chains that have been holding you down for years. All of the years that people have been asking for this.
Absolutely. It was a beast. It was a beast of a case. But there you go, guys. That is the mammoth story of Casey Anthony. And Caylee Anthony. I think, again, Caylee gets quite lost in this case. There's loads of pictures and videos, and she is a fucking adorable little kid, actually. I'll give her that. I'll give you that, Caylee. And it's just heartbreaking. She'd be 16 years old now if she was alive. Yeah.
So on that big fat bummer, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And a Happy New Year. Goodwill to all men. Joy to the world. The Lord is come. I was just reeling them off. Silent night, holy night. Round yon virgin, mother and child. Have an amazing Christmas, guys. It's been a tough year and an amazing year at the same time, and you've been there for us every step of the way, and we couldn't be more grateful. So make sure you look after yourselves this Christmas. Have a wicked new year, and we'll see you in 2022.
Yeah, bloody hell. Stay safe, and hopefully next year we'll bring more positive things. We'll see you then.
Goodbye.
Bye.